I now have 51 followers. Great. But all I need now is an average viewership of 3 viewers. The problem is that I've streamed so many hours now that my average view is like 6 or something. So it's like it's average, right? So it's like I would need 3 viewers to watch a significant number of hours in work. You know what I mean? So we'll see. It's a journey. Not like too fast. But like that does enable like subscriptions and stuff. Piecing it bit by bit. And like you can also, if you've got Amazon Prime, you can as like a free sub. So you get one per month Prime. Well then Prime account subscribe to me $3. But at least it look like I have one subscriber. The sad thing is like there's just so much that you're doing, but you can't do everything. You gotta pick and choose a little bit, but or just you know work the hours a week, whatever it is, 11 hours a day. Yeah, and nobody told you. So you just like, did you just leave or? Here's a pro tip. It's Adelaide. If there's water falling from the sky, your class is gonna be cut in half. People are fucking pussies over here. They just, if it's raining, they're just like, nah. The Adelaide drivers are so bad that it will just deter people from going out when it rains. I think that's actually what it is. I think that just because Adelaide drivers suck. Let's do like a really quick intro as we transition to this thing, and we will continue the discussion. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Welcome. We're here. This is going to be a bit of a test, but I think currently we're calling this the Creative Meatbags podcast because we are both creatives and currently we are mostly human.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a meatbag to through and through. I don't know about creative, but I fill out the meatbag bit.
Yeah, me and all those other meatbags, we go way back. And yeah, I feel like this is just like a bit of a catch up that we're going to be doing on a regular basis, and just sort of yeah, keeping up with sort of what's happening in tech, what's happening with all these creative tools, and yeah, how we're going to sort of adapt and work with them to make the stuff that we want to make. And
Absolutely.
hopefully one of these days, AI will be doing our laundry instead of our job. I think that's the hope, but we'll see. We'll see if we get there.
It's very optimistic. It's most likely the case. It'll take all the good jobs, and you'll still be doing your washing.
Yeah, well, that's the famous tweet that people have been referencing a lot, which is I don't want AI to do all the creative jobs so that I have time to do my laundry, so I have time to do the creative stuff.
That's right. Now
And
you
then, oh, go on.
I was going to say you sent some really interesting content my way just recently.
Oh yeah.
One of them I thought we could have a little bit more of a look at, which was the really cool kind of martial arts VR video that because one of the things you and I have been talking about recently is The question of full immersion or maybe kind of half and half immersion with virtual reality, right? So
Oh yeah, we are talking
if
about
you're
that
doing a
today.
VR
Yep.
game and the question is, should you be fully immersed in that VR game or should it be more augmented reality where you're still seeing your surroundings because of safety reasons, of course, right?
Yeah, so
Um,
we're calling that mixed reality at the minute, and the Quest 3, which you tried at Avcon when you tried my game, basically you can just double tap on the headset, and you can see through the cameras in full color pass through, and you can see everything that's going on. And now there are games that mix that, so you can do a little bit of both. So you can pop in and out of VR without taking the headset off, and also, as you might have seen as well, I sent you some screenshots of my lovely new pool table that I have, which is a really awesome implementation of a game that just came out called Miracle Pool, which is essentially a mixed reality pool game. But the best part is that only puts the pool table in the game world, so everything else is still your living room, is still your kitchen or whatever. So you can walk around the pool table completely naturally. Got enough, or you got to move it around your space if you for it, or rotate it with a thumbstick. But then, yeah, you essentially are just walking around your house playing pool on something. So I managed to line it up with our dining table, and so for the most part, I could just shoot straight off of the dining table, and it felt like I was playing pool, which is awesome. So
mm,
all of the apps now are sort of experimenting with this mixed reality thing, and there are lots of like interesting implications for it. Um, yeah, and like when it first came out, and we went to GCAP last year, we were talking to a lot of the other VR devs that have already been playing around with the Quest 3. I think some of them actually had some access to it and knew that Meta was going to be sort of emphasizing mixed reality for the next little bit going forward, mostly because they want to they want to showcase the technology. They're the only guys that have it, so of course they want to be like, hey, if you make a mixed reality app, then you'll get priority space on the store, kind of stuff. That was very much the thing, and I was very bullish that like I thought it was a gimmick and that it's not going to be the next big thing. Whatever is like I when I play VR, I want to be immersed. I want to be fully encased in it. That's kind of the whole point, right? Is to put a headset on and escape and be somewhere else and have nothing kind of distracting you from it. But it definitely seems like there are use cases, and there are a lot of people out there that sort of still want to be aware of what's going on around the house and stuff while they're playing as well, especially people with family, kids, and pets and stuff like that. So I can see it from both sides now, and I think like just giving people the choice is an option, right?
yeah. Well, now for those who don't know me at all, the my background was for a short period of time as an industrial electrician. So one of my jobs was working at a massive steel mill down in Wowler, and you're down the caster was where I was based. And this caster, for those who are unfamiliar, is just where they get liquid steel and they pour it into molds and all sorts of things, make very large steel beams or large big steel planks, I guess you could call it, right? Ready to be then sent off to wherever they go. But such a huge place. You got wires running everywhere, whether it's electrical wires, control wires, or internet and data. And one of the things that would have been really great for me would have been
Mm.
the ability to put on a VR headset, or not like some sort of something that's, I guess, going to be rated for heavy industry, and to be able to look around and see where the supposed gantry lines and where all the fixtures are and things like that. So, you could literally see through walls and kind of get an idea of where things should be. Of course, it's reliant on people updating those maps. But if then you had an idea, well, I know that this part of the circuit is down. Can I then look and see where that wire is supposed to be running and then maybe replace it? Something like that would have been a fantastic use case
Yeah,
for that kind of mixed
there are
reality.
so many use cases for industrial VR, and that's starting to happen. Some people have been using the Hololens, so it's like you can sort of remote in to like the inspector or like whoever's on site, and then you can kind of direct them through their eyes, like as a POV thing and stuff like that. There are video games that have a similar thing where you can trace wires through the wall and stuff now. Yeah,
Mm,
it's interesting stuff for sure. I thought one of the big ones would be like, if you had a 3D model of your mill or if you of your work site already, you could be running people through orientation while they're flying in, right? Things like that
mm.
would be, I think, for industrial VR.
A good question. So for a little while, I was fantasizing about the possibility of going into defense and using like some form of psychology or like my psychological science background um, to kind of ask the question: how could you create military applications using augmented reality?
Mm.
What could you use to convince someone to kill themselves? Say you're on a
Whoa,
ship somewhere, right? Yeah, like say you're in the defense force, you want to find military
you
applications,
were
weaponized
fantasizing about.
applications of augmented reality. Well, I just wanted to hypothesize because if I'm thinking about it, somebody else is thinking about it, right? Like and the
Oh,
question
like a
is,
yeah, all right, okay.
yeah. So could you use augmented reality to lead someone to create an accident that killed people in a military situation, right? Like in time of war? What do you reckon? How would you you're say you're we're in war period. You've been tasked to develop, maybe hack into a system and take advantage of augmented reality systems that are currently being used, maybe by maintenance staff or maintenance crew that are on a ship, and you've got to convince them to do something that might bring about a huge issue that risks lives, or maybe something subtle. Maybe it's not something so obvious. Maybe it's just a small thing, but it has a massive implication later down the line on operations. What do you reckon?
Yeah, that's kind of nuts. I'm assuming you're not familiar then with the Black Mirror episode that's similar to this concept.
No, what happened to that one?
So there's a Black Mirror episode. How much Black Mirror have you watched?
I did watch the first season,
You've
but
seen the
that was a
first
long time ago.
season? Okay, yeah, yeah.
Mm,
So I think this might have been season 2 or something. But anyway, there's like this whole episode that sort of plays out where it's like us versus them, like military thing where like that, and it's basically like a zombie flick, right? Like there's these people that clearly have something wrong with them, their eyes are all
yeah.
blacked out or whatever.
Mm.
You sort of remembering it?
Actually, I was thinking just when you started that off, I thought you might have been talking about the one where it's like some anonymous group that directs people to do tasks that they don't
No, that's
know.
sort of like the
And
Uber one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
oh yeah,
this is like sort of like a military thing. It sort of feels like kind of Black Hawk Downey or whatever. Similar thing, but then obviously you find out at the end that they've all got augmented reality contact lenses in, and they've
mm,
just been putting a Snapchat filter over the enemy to dehumanize them enough that the soldiers are willing to kill them, right? But they're really just like
oh yeah, yeah,
that's
I
like the
did see
whole
that
thing.
one. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so it was
But
like a
like
video game for him.
yeah, but it's like they use the augmented reality to separate to create a point of separation. So basically turning them into zombies so that their soldiers had no issue in killing them en masse, right? Even though in in their eyes it looks like they're vicious and they've got their teeth bared and they're
Mm,
trying to kill them, but like when the filter comes off, they're literally scared and crying,
mm,
trying to protect their child. Yeah, all the
yeah.
cheery stuff that comes with a Black Mirror episode. Yeah, that's it's an interesting thing. Like, and that's I mean, creativity is one thing, right? But then like the discussion is going to have to turn to warfare, right? Like we're going to have the next level of Geneva Convention, and we're okay, cool. You know, these AI tools are the modern mustard gas. We should have automation.
Mm,
Right? I mean, there was something I was listening to just recently. They were saying that there was basically during the Ukraine war, there's just a guy sitting in an office chair, his gaming chair, vaping away with a headset on, and he's just flying C4 drones into people and blowing them up
yep,
in first person,
yep,
like remote completely. And there's all these like drone pilots and stuff that have PTSD. What's stopping you then from like, yeah, putting a filter over the footage in real time and making it less gruesome for that person?
yeah.
They don't experience that. you've got people that work in click farms and stuff that have to get rid of all the spam and terrible like video and stuff that gets uploaded to platforms all the time. And so basically their
Yep.
job is to look at traumatizing video footage.
Yep.
So there's like all that crazy shit to it for sure. Like I think that's definitely going to be a discussion that's gonna happen with the powers that be. That's going to be like, all right, these weapons are way too asymmetric. Um, that yeah, we need to find some kind of data ban from warfare for sure.
Uh, Well, I mean, that would be the nice, healthy, wise conversation I had before a war happens. But as you know, it's more likely the case this would be a retrospective conversation that would happen after the war, once it's provided that leverage to whatever side's using it. Right? Like pretty much every time something gets brought into the Geneva Convention is after the fact, long after the war's been finished, and they've justified whatever they could at that time. And then they've gone back and thought, well, you know what, that was actually pretty bad, it's pretty horrific, right?
Yeah,
It's not like they didn't know before they used it. They knew it was going to be bad, but it's only after. It's like the means justifies the end, right? So, well, the ends
yeah,
justify the mean. Um, now, now you were just mentioning before about augmented reality, but there are also other things that aren't so like in the sense that when we were talking before of changing the person to look different, right? To look like this hideous monster. That's one way where you're masking the
well,
thing that
it's
you're
just
doing so that
modern real
it's
time
dehumanizing.
propaganda.
Yeah, it is. It's propaganda, but there's also other subtle things that you can do that, which you and I are both in this field now of recontextualizing an activity, right? You recontextualize something. So even though you could be looking at something horrific, like for example, if you put like a Looney Tunes yikes sign in front of something, all of a sudden you recontextualize what becomes a horrific scene, right? Like, and that's like
That's
these
like
things happen.
the Freddie W video. Have you seen that where they do like it's like a full on gun battle, but instead of like muzzle flares and blood, they're like flowers that fly out of the bodies and stuff. It's all like
Yeah,
sunshine and rainbows.
like all that drone pilot would need to feel better about himself is again some
10
some
points.
organizational psychologist or some crew just simply making like little experience points going
Yeah,
up every time
exactly.
he's
Just
killed someone, right?
gamify it. Level
Yeah.
2.
So we'll have to wait and see how the ADF adopts that one, then.
Jesus. Yeah. The yeah, I've got a couple of friends that are in defense and they're working tech stuff.
So
Like it's one of
can we
those
share?
things. It's like the Oppenheimer thing a little bit where it's like I don't want to be involved in this and then it's like I also don't want someone else to be involved in this, so maybe I should be involved in this so that you can oversee it. One of those
Hmm,
weird things that's like, oh, yeah. In terms of sharing your screen, yes. I think if you do share your screen, it will pop up and squeeze it over.
that's right. I was going to mention, seeing as we're on the subject, we're talking about one aspect of being in war and being in a war setting, but when you mentioned as well propaganda, have you noticed the very, very large collection of games that have started coming out, first-person shooters, which have been drawing on really hyper-realistic graphics now? Um, so
Oh,
there's now a series of games that have
body
started coming
cam.
out. Yeah, yeah, like, and that's just one. Like, there are other games now that are really drawing on hyperrealism in the games and first-person shooters. And if you actually look at some of the developers behind these, they're actually, I mean, it's not original. It's not that this hasn't been done before in the past. It certainly has. But I think Body Count particularly actually does work with Department of Defense in the US, right? So
Oh yeah.
you'll have a look at the funding or some of the teams that are working on this now actually do have military applications.
I actually
So the
don't
question
that really.
is, yeah. So if you have a look, the question is the military using these games to desensitize young men?
Yeah.
Um, almost, you could say, a kind of a preparation for when you may actually get conscripted or drafted, and you're actually on the front lines.
Yeah, I mean there was literally a game back in the early 2000s called America's Army,
Hmm.
which was literally a game funded by the American Army and everything was accurate and it was literally like, "Hey kids, come play video games. Want to sign up?"
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's like No, man, there's no respawn in real life.
You do.
That was
It's just
literally
another
the
recruit.
joke, right? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
oh god. Yeah, yeah, that was like a definitely like a joke in the 2000s, right? There was web series and stuff,
Mm.
like all gamer culture and stuff was about that, where it's like the military recruiter guys would go hang out at Counter-Strike competitions and try to recruit kids. So
Did you
bad.
see
Or
that?
like
There, I
the
think it
last
was.
Starfighter and stuff, right? Like,
I think it was just last year. They had a There was some defense recruitment thing, and they had like a full anime girl singing and dancing. I gotta find this. Let's see if I can find it. But it was this anime. I'm gonna say U.S. recruit
oh
defense,
god.
and that should be enough.
They're like trying
Yes,
to
the
get
Army and
weebs
Marines
into the army.
are at Anime New York City. Yeah, here we go. So check this out, right? So I'm just gonna send this link to you. I'll let you share the screen because you probably got better bandwidth than me. Take a look at this one.
Yeah, I could probably do like a look. I could just switch to desktop, couldn't I? Whoop.
So nice, good-looking Misato there
Oh,
from
it's just this like
Evangelion.
literally, yeah, freaking cosplay chick at the army recruit. What? Oh, but the Marines booth at the Anime NYC had a crowd of people engaging doing pull-ups. God, they're desperate, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah, like who wants to go fight their war? Like that means no offense. And like surely like there's studies or that shows that like poverty rates and recruitment rates are,
Mm.
especially like in the US. Jesus. Well, you took this to a dark place pretty quickly.
Only if you don't
we're
take it with
only
a
we're only
nice good joke and
how many
laugh.
minutes in? What are we at?
Yeah.
22 minutes. All right. Pretty good.
I
That's
mean, I
decent.
guess
Yeah, yeah. But no, like cuz you were talking
the
about
defense
the
are recruiting meatbags, aren't they? So
Oh,
now they
that's where
got
you
weak.
got it. Like what is your major malfunction meat bag? That's where you were heading. That's funny. So I wasn't going to call it creative maggots. I was creative jarheads. Funny. Yeah, yeah, no, because yeah, because we were talking about that mixed reality martial arts game, or whatever, which I thought was kind of clever, right? Like it's sort of that almost like a harder version of like Dance Dance Revolution or like Just Dance in a way where it tells you where to put your hands next and stuff like that. I think there's like I think there's potential in that. We're not there yet when it comes to sort of IK and AI like ragdolls and stuff. I mean, we might almost be there, but I don't think anyone's really done it yet properly because like messing around in Boneworks, like I've been trying to do like a bit of judo and stuff like that to some of the humanoid enemies, and you can throw them around and you can do a little bit of stuff, but you can tell they've sort of cheated the physics on them and they're a little bit like marionettes.
Yep. Yep.
But I think that we wouldn't be too far away from you being able to have like a proper like VR uke and just do like actual techniques on like
Mm.
on a VR ragdoll, which is super fun. You can do it like a little bit on some of the current games. So I'd be interested in looking into that once the sort of IK tech gets a little bit better. And it probably will be using a version of AI to sort of getting the like similar to the new humanoid robots, right? Like how they're using AI to sort of simulate how they would move their muscles in order to get up, things like that. I feel like that wouldn't be too far away with some of this NVIDIA tech that's coming out, which could be super cool
Mm.
to be able to like do virtual martial arts and train at home, like
Yep.
shadow boxing style. I think would be super cool. But then like yeah, the mixed reality feel could be a bit of fun for like a lightsaber game, especially like so you don't bash into things. But I still want to do something that's like fully immersive and even
Mm.
one that's like pitch black, like the literally the Luke Skywalker blast shield training thing with the spatial audio. I
Mm.
think that'll be super cool. So I reckon like at some point I'll have a bit of a like I'll set a day aside and I'll do like a Unreal Engine sprint session where like it'll just be me and ChatGPT and like a couple of tutorial videos or whatever, and I'll see if I can go like from literally not knowing anything to like a game working in
Yep.
VR like with a lightsaber, and I think that'll be super. That'll be interesting. But
Mm.
that'll be sort of like I think a way to start messing with what we've been talking about is like doing some like lightsaber
Mm.
training in VR.
Yep.
That'll be quite cool. And then
So
like yeah,
for those who are just not as privy when it comes to understanding the processes behind game development, so just there, you're suggesting as well, like that, really just a good solid day with obviously a tool Copilot or ChatGPT or something like that, that you could pretty much come up with a nice, good, scrappy kind of something that a minimum viable product, I guess you could say, right? Is that the true, or is that the case?
yeah. Or I would have a working prototype in a day. I think
Wow.
for something that's like lightsabers, and because that's really simple, right? It's just a glowing cylinder attached to your hand, and you can come up with some rudimentary graphics or whatever.
Mm,
Especially that I was thinking that it would be, like I said, pitch black, and maybe you'd
mm,
only see the lightsaber, and everything else would be sort of audio. So I just have like
mm,
a floating sphere that you can't see flying around the room, but you'd be able to hear it anytime it moves,
mm,
and then it would sort of maybe charge up or it would stop moving, and then you'd know that it's about to shoot you, and then you'd have to put the lightsaber in that direction.
mm,
And then you could do like after that there would be rudimentary to do like laser blasts and back hit targets or
mm,
things like that. That's pretty easy. Yeah, like especially because Unreal Engine sort of has that like it has like little blocks of code that you just link up logically, and it's sort of like a flow chart.
mm,
It's like yeah, pretty simple. I've just never done it.
mm.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's it.
that's literally it, right? But you can just literally ask an AI. Okay, if I was going to be doing this, like, what would you do? The reason
Mm,
I've been sticking with Unity is because, like, if I was doing an Unreal thing, I would sort of need to know where the toolbars are and what the buttons are. And then I am assuming that ChatGPT will sort of just explain to you what your script should look like. But with Unity, I can ask it, hey, I've got this programming problem, and it will just send me the code, and I just copy and paste it in. Or it like has a bug, and then I say, hey, there's a bug, and they're like, oh, cool, fix this thing, and then you do it. So that's like that's been like pretty helpful with some of the stuff I've been doing because it's all pretty basic math stuff. But yeah, I'd be interested into diving into some point. So it's a good project to do that because yeah, like the visual fidelity and easy to do pretty quickly. Um, and I'd just be interested to see how sort of the VR tool set works in real, because it's like different and you can play around with some of the ideas.
mm.
Yeah, just like something a bit
I
fresh.
was gonna help my
Oh god,
grandmother.
wrong window. Why is that still? God, no wonder my like Chrome was being weird before. It's like I've just had all these windows open background that have been up. I like had this like I've been like just smashing notes in my note site the last couple of days because I've
Mm.
been filming rugby like all day for the last like 4 days.
Yeah,
So I've just
yeah,
like
yeah, in the rain
anytime
too,
I'm
huh?
filming sport, I just have podcasts running as I'm doing it because it's like super boring otherwise. So I've just been like downloading hours and hours of yeah industry knowledge and tech stuff and stuff into my head. So I've got all
Mm.
these freaking notes. Um, yeah, but I think I wrote something down. Saber stuff. Saber. I thought I had a note recently about it. Nope.
Hard to
Maybe
think
not.
that now,
Something
like,
similar.
Beat Saber has been out for so long, right? I was just
Yeah.
talking to like just a woman in a probably mid 40s, and like
Mm.
has kids and stuff like that. And that was one of the only games she's ever done on VR, but she absolutely loved it. And it's
Oh
such
yeah.
that means that it's really such a household name. But yeah.
Oh, it's insane, and like we have absolutely no idea how much money it's made. What
Mm.
we do know is that this was in the podcast I listened to. Hey, Gorilla Tag is just like this kid, like this really kid game, and it's like you're a gorilla and you use your arms to sort of climb around and play tag, basically. Like it's literally you're playing chasey in VR. It's a free game. It has 1 million daily users and like a bit more than that monthly users, but it's like a lot.
Mm.
So it's like mostly kids. They play, average playtime is an hour, and that game has raised 100 million.
Wow.
But it's a free game, so that means it's only in-game purchases like costumes and like cosmetics and stuff, and that
Mm.
has still raised 100.
I don't think we can be really living in a living crisis if we can still have these in-game purchases.
Yeah, but it's just kids being like, "No, mum,
Yeah,
buy me the thing," and like
yeah,
parents just can't
yeah.
say no, and it's like, okay,
They've
but it's
probably
2.99 here, 2.99 there, whatever, and that adds up to 100 million.
it is insane.
It's
Like you said,
absolutely
1 million
insane.
daily users. So
Yeah, because it's
yeah.
a free to play game. It's the Fortnite of VR.
Oh,
That's crazy. So if Beat Saber is $30 USD and has been for the last like what 7 years, 8 years,
dear.
and they've got all their song packs and stuff, it has been raking in them. They reckon, yeah, around about 255 million lifetime. I reckon it's way higher than that. Oh, when was this? A year ago, they reckon it was 255 million.
Wow.
So that's pretty nuts. They reckon it's about 4 million copies. What's interesting is someone recently just looked up the stats for the sort of the introductory mission, or the introductory like software that you play, basically to show off the mixed reality software in the Quest 3, and they've just
Mm.
shown that there's, what do they say, is at least 1 million entries in the unique entries in leaderboards. So that means we know at least 1 million Quest 3s have been sold, and
Mm.
it's probably closer to like, maybe double that or 1.5 times that or something like that, because not everybody has done it. And then that doesn't factor in like people buying two of them, buying them are just app, pretty crazy.
Mm.
But the Quest 2 sold over 20 million copies, and now they are absolutely like dropping the price of the Quest 2 now, get rid of all their old inventory, because
Yep.
they're about to release a 3S between the 2 and the 3.
Mm.
So they're really just trying to get rid of all the 2s now to get them out the market and then release the 3S. So they're counting on these headsets like still selling quite well. So VR is definitely on the up and up, which is cool.
What kind of card are you running for these days? What do you got in your machine?
Oh, graphics card. I've
Hmm.
got a 3080 that I bought during COVID,
Yep.
during the whole crypto everything. So I just mined on it until I got the value of the graphics card back.
Yep. That's
Yeah,
good.
so I've still got a pretty decent rig. Not that I use it for gaming that much lately anyway, mostly just video editing and AI.
Mm.
So
Mm.
like it's good like on that front, like being able to make AI stuff locally. You need a
Mm.
decent card with a decent VRAM. So, but I'll probably upgrade maybe in the next year or so, and then put
Yep.
this in my secondary machine and can make twice as much AI.
Yeah.
And
Oh
are
dear.
you across the Udio Suno lawsuit?
No, what's happened there?
Oh well, just the big record companies are coming after their
Oh
main threat.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
but I mean, in the US, they'd already made it that you couldn't copyright AI stuff anyway. So now
yeah, but
this kind of
now
seems like
they're
a
now they're
natural.
making the argument that Udio Suno illegally used their content to train on,
Mm.
and that it can recreate things that are so similar that could be considered a recreation or a derivative work, and so now they're trying to sue them for 100,000 per song that they've found that it's sort of in the training data. And then
Mm.
someone recently played around with Suno, got it to like make some trap house music or whatever, and then at the start of the song it literally goes DJ Khaled. And they're like, oh, it's like catching the AI like red-handed. The fact that
Yeah.
it's got like, and they got it to do like basically a bunch of different producer tags. They actually managed to get the AI to spit them out, and it's like, oh shit, it's definitely in the data, which is
Yeah.
crazy. The thing that's going to make this lawsuit really interesting is, of course, who has the better lawyers, right? That's why I was like, it's like the King Kong versus Godzilla thing, because it's like, who has the better
Mm.
lawyers? Um, but what the precedent that will get set that's going to make all this very interesting is once the AI has been trained and you've now just got this like 250 meg file that is compressed knowledge of like terabytes worth of data, probably petabytes worth of data. It's all in the brain, right? Like it's sort of like all the neuro net like connections are now fixed, right?
Mm.
Now you just delete once you delete all the training data and you just have this brain full of weights and balances. Is that copyright? Like, is that in breach of copyright?
Mm.
Right? Like, you don't have it doesn't have the physical data anymore. All it does is have an understanding of everything that it's listened to, as a human
Mm.
does as well, right?
Yeah, well,
So
that's what I would also argue.
that's where
Pretty
the
much.
that's where the distinction needs to be made. That like, yeah, it's not like you've put all of Spotify into an algorithm into a hard drive, and then when you click generate, it takes pieces of each file and kind of mashes them together. Is instead it's like listened to it and understands it, spit out stuff. So that's gonna be the interesting thing is like sort of where the legislation on that goes, where it's like, okay, well, your AI has read all of these like fantasy novels, and then if you ask it to write a fantasy novel, it's going to write a fantasy novel, but it's used this stuff as a basis. It has it in its brain. So do you need to compensate? You need to pay out? What's the go? So that's going to be the weird thing is that like once it's in this latent format, in this latent space, like the once it's in the black box, is that protected? Is that a different? Is that now been transformed into a different medium and therefore it's not protected by copyright? That's sort of where those lawsuits are going to go. And then once the first one happens, then all of the other lawsuits are going to follow that precedent, right?
Mm.
So,
Mm.
like, if the
Yeah,
lawsuit
and that
goes one way, then everyone else's case is going to get thrown out of court. If it goes the other way, everyone's going to come out of the woodwork and try suing for everything.
but the question, of course, is like if these machines are learning from these data sets, how far down do the data sets go? Like, I mean, it's not like these music companies haven't got their own data sets that they've accumulated from other people in terms of working out what music should be trending and when.
Mm.
Or even say, for example, like, if you want to go back down to what about the difference between AI and some teen in his bedroom listening to a whole bunch of music and then creating his own derivative piece and then making a buck on that.
Mm.
Where does that line end? Because at the end of the day, everything's derivative. It's not like
Yeah.
anything's really that original anymore. Right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. So that's sort of the hard thing. Like everything's a remix. Where do you draw the line, right? And then you know what? Like there's all these music tools that are certain degrees of automated or algorithmic or whatever, then yeah, like that's that weird thing where you the line. I mean, currently it looks like the line is that only a human can create a copyrightable work, and then yeah, it's got to be now about like okay, well, if we're training AI on something, do you need to own the data, or can it not be trained on something that is already copyright protected work, right?
Mm.
So that's where things are going to get interesting. And then at what point does that stifle um, useful, stuff that will genuinely benefit humanity, or at what point will it just create ultra monopolies that can, you know, basically dump dump like content into industry and completely devalue it to zero?
Mm.
That's going to be like, and I kind of don't know which outcome I want more at this point. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like the we're in a really good we're in a really interesting spot right now where the audience is swinging indie. I feel like more and more our generation and new generation are sort of completely disinterested in mainstream content media. They would
Mm.
much they the people that are creating social content, kids that are watching it, the adults, throughout, stuff like that. It has a genuineness to it and kind of a deeper connection to it, where it's somewhere between someone you watch on the internet and someone that you would hang out with if you knew them, or feels like, that you get to hang out with them, or whatever that very parasocial thing. I don't think people are interested anymore in like actual celebrities,
Mm.
because the connection is different, right? It's sort of it's too disconnected that you don't
Yep.
get that same thing. So I think it's all falling down and crumbling anyway. So
Mm.
I'm like, and Jesus, like, who the hell is going to cry for these fucking record labels? Like,
Yeah.
no one is going to cry for the big four record labels that have been basically milking this cow for 70 years. And they're just getting pissed off that, the teats aren't producing any. So I don't fucking give a shit about their stuff, but I do care that artists do still need protections for likeness.
Mm.
Um, things that they create and innovate on.
Mm.
They still need to be protected. But you get into that weird space where it's like the people that are actually fighting for copyright protection aren't the artists; they're the companies that hold the IP, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about something you said there regarding those parasocial relationships. And I've been having to travel quite a bit lately, like hour drive to
Mm.
locations and back.
Hey,
And
great
I've been listening to the
opportunity for
radio.
podcasts.
Yeah, well, yeah, totally. No, absolutely. But I have had the radio on, right? I've been listening to Triple M in Adelaide, and
Oh, okay.
not giving them a plug or anything like that. But it was funny because I was fascinated by the I guess the
That
mindset
it
behind the
still
radio
exists.
presenter. Yeah, that still exists, right? Like, my kids watch, PewDiePie still, even though PewDiePie's like kind of drifted a lot away from gaming, is just talking about his life in Japan. But my
Mm.
kids, because they remember we're doing like the you laugh you lose and stuff like that,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and then so they have developed that kind of parasocial relationship,
yeah.
and so
Mm.
they're now fascinated by his genuine life as he's like has his young son and what life is like in Japan being married as a dad. And
Mm.
I was thinking, like, what is it that differentiates, like, Pewds from like the Triple M cast, and
Yeah.
like, what gives them that authenticity? What is it? What is it?
Radio is, yeah, it's somewhere in between. Like, because there's usually the radio personality is like a bit more genuine than like TV personality. But they still have to toe a line, right? To a certain extent. I
They're,
mean, Triple M. I mean, what's the line? That
they're pretty
rock
loose.
rock isn't dead, and that footy is the only sport we should care about. Um, is that Triple M? I don't know. I haven't
Yeah,
listened in
yeah,
a
that's
long,
pretty
long
much it.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because like
Uh,
Triple M was pretty much the place where you go when you can't play footy anymore. It's like they're all washed up AFL players. Because I used to work with some
yeah.
of them on the sports shows. So it was really funny. Like because we used to get like it was the funniest shit ever because the producer would come in and he'd be like, "Oh, we've got a great show on this week, Jono. It's gonna be great. We've got Kerrs coming in and we've got blah 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 and all this kind of thing." And I'm like, "Don't tell me names. Like you're just gonna get glazed eyes. I don't know who any of these fucking people are. Tell me what they do. Like tell me their role. Tell me what they've done. Why are they on the show? Don't tell me their fucking name because I'm never gonna fucking know. No, I know probably 5 football players' names, and they were probably on the 1996, 1997 Crows team when they won back to back. They're the only names that I know. And when I went to that event as a child, because they won back to back and they came to Wyler, and my
I
mum's friend
remember
from
that.
work,
Yeah.
yeah, had like the fucking t-shirt and everything, went out to get signed. I had this tiny little foam
Uh,
football, and I went and they were like gave me a texter and was like, "Go get it signed, go get it signed." Okay, I ran around and I came back with the fucking media manager's signature on my ball. He was wearing a Crows Guernsey. I didn't know he wasn't a player. So like, but that would happen all the time. And then anytime we would get these like footy guys in, and the interview would be like, "Oh, about the good old days, about footy or whatever," and then it would inevitably be like, "Oh, so what you up to now?" And like 90% of them are running a car yard, and then like one of them was running like a PPE shop where you buy safety equipment and stuff. I was
oh
like,
no, like RC or something like that.
no,
Yeah.
it's like the safety hub. I think it's on Main North Road or whatever.
Oh
But
yeah,
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 but I
yeah.
was like, oh, okay. It's just like
Oh
that's
man.
funny. But yeah, so if you don't make it to Triple M, it's you running a car yard or a pub on Woodville Road, or like that's where washed up footy guys go. I mean, it's a young man's game, right? So you got to like
Yeah, that's
you get
right.
you get to like 34 or whatever, and you got to start investing in something. Once your body's
Yeah.
done, you're done, right? So funny. But yeah,
Man.
I had to live in that world a little bit with that whole like dinosaur footy group, and it was a weird dynamic. It was super
Mm.
weird. I basically had to like put my asshole hat on daily just to sort of like get respect. It was a weird
Ah,
thing.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what it is. Like somehow like social media just has this yeah, genuineness or integrity thing. And like obviously it doesn't well, right? Like
It's
there are plenty
grifters,
of
totally.
yeah, and there are plenty out there that are playing that and not. Um but yeah, I feel like it's somewhere between yeah, like that. It's the documentary, right? Like it's by documenting a life in a way or a process or yeah, like an industry in a way. And then some of it is just I guess like straight up voyeurism in a way.
Mm.
And yeah, they involve usually they include a bunch of stuff about their actual life, right? And the um it's not sugar coated, it's not fake, it's not scripted. So like I feel like people can yeah, get more genuine connection out of that. And I feel like that is just so much more in demand now than a lot of the other stuff. So I feel like a lot of it falls by the wayside now, right? I mean, like Will
Yeah.
Smith and Jack Black have YouTube channels. Go figure.
Mhm. You were using that term voyeurism. I've come to call it something different. And this is not to disparage anyone, but I noticed that we humans tend to have this desire to, or this ability to defer cognitive tasks to others, right? Like, so, say for example, you've seen this before. You're in a Facebook chat or something like that, or in whatever chat, and someone will they'll literally ask a question in a chat, say, "Oh, does anybody have the address for so and so?" Which they could have
Rather than Googling
literally
it. Yeah,
Googled
yeah,
themselves. They could have done the same effort
yeah.
into a Google
Offloading.
search bar. But what happens is we need to do two things. We need to feel a sense of validation in whatever we're doing from the group. The other is then, of course, crowdsourcing, offloading that task, that cognitive task, to somebody else. And I wonder how much it is that, living is just so difficult for people, or even having your own thoughts, that you need to fill the space through the content of others, right? Like you need to hear what other people are telling you. Because maybe their thoughts, for whatever reason you feel may are more valid than your own, or their lives are just more interesting, or whatever it is. And I don't know why that is. I don't. I'm not trying to call people stupid, but I wonder if maybe there is maybe our lives are just so hard, like trying to get day by day, going to work, doing the thing, right, doing the grind, that it's actually really difficult to start to come up with your own sense of self, your own values, your own outlook on life, and so it's just easier to almost defer that task to a influencer, like a social media personality,
Yeah,
right? Like,
I would agree on that front. Was like you see it a lot in like movie stuff, like when a new TV show comes out, people will watch it and then immediately go to YouTube and be like, "Well, what's everyone saying about it?" So I know how to feel.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
I do genuinely see that a lot. I feel like yeah, people do sort of go, "Oh, like yeah, what should I think about this?" And then they go online to find out what they should think, rather than
yeah.
having a genuine themselves. It's yeah, it's definitely
And
um
I wonder, so you go.
no, you go.
So this seems like there's almost a class divide, right, between what you say what you'd consider to be content creators and consumers of content, right? Like, so those who are world builders, who are building something, whatever that thing might be. It could be like I've saw this. There's a competition out there for bed making, right? For making beds. Literally, just they have like this massive stage area, and they have judges, and they have an audience, and they live stream it, and it's just like hotel staff how fast they can make a bed. So
Oh,
like, it doesn't matter what
interesting.
the content is. It doesn't matter what the content is, but there's someone willing to consume it for whatever reason. Maybe they just enjoy watching people make beds or something, but where they could make their own. But the idea is that there's this distinction, this difference now between those who are making content, whatever that content might be, and those who are quite willing to just passively consume it, or
Well,
to
it's literally
um,
creators versus
it really is.
interesting anecdote is that when you tell um the hotel staff that do housekeeping and stuff, you tell them that the pace that they work and the type of work that they do is genuinely good for fitness, they feel better about their job and they actually burn more calories. How
All
weird is
right,
that?
fair enough.
But the funny thing is like the physical task of like the way they clean rooms and things like that, and the way that they are sort
Mm.
of paced at doing it, it's like genuinely really good fitness. And they're like, yeah, and then like there was like this. I don't know. I've heard the anecdote secondhand through another podcast at some point, and said that yeah, like they ended up started tracking calories and started losing, being like healthier and stuff. It
Mm.
was like super interesting. But yeah, I sort of agree with you there. I feel like there is that thing, and honestly, like I sort of flip flop, um, in those roles myself, right? Like sometimes I'm not feeling it, and I become very much a consumer, and then there
Mm.
are other times where, yeah, I am feeling it. No, I gotta make something. Like I feel like I haven't done anything in something,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
I think you're correct though. There is sort of a class, or at least a privilege divide there too, right? Where it's like the haves and have not, can and can'ts, or just the life that some people lead, where it's like they feel like they can't do something all the time,
Mm. Mm.
and
Yep.
so that's that whole thing of like, well, when you come home from work, if is it that you just yeah you need something to switch your brain off so that you can recover in time for your shift, or
Mm.
and so that was like sort of the deep conversation. I'm not sure if I brought this up last time we chatted, but like I had to kind of have pull myself aside and have a deep conversation with myself about like what do I value and what do I consider success, and sort of I created a bit of a list of like things that I have achieved, and just like by the act of creating the list and like having to actively think about all the different things sort of helped me in a way, because it's something I hadn't really done. And it's not until you start really thinking about it and start listing things, then you go like, oh, actually, like, so I've actually done quite a lot in the last few years or whatever. And so that was sort of a bit of a process for me. I may not have, you know, any significant savings, or, don't have a house, or don't have that or whatever. Um, but it was like a bit of a thing. It was like, well, no, but like I have a lot of autonomy. I do get a lot of enjoyment out of my life, and I do have a lot of time for my passions. And I've
Mm.
found a way to work most of them into my work and stuff like that too. So I sort of pulled myself aside and went, well, it is probably slower going than what other people are doing, but in a way it's more sustainable and it has more
Mm.
potential growth than other
Mm.
things. And like, so you've had quite a few career changes. Like
Yeah.
what do you sort of feel on that front, right? Where it's like, were you still at one still? Were you still at other roles? You would be somewhere different, but there would be costs and balances.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that just like a ikigai is like a Japanese kind of philosophy about balancing these things, like having work that is meaningful and needed and pays you as well. Like so, then like have that balance. But look, for those who don't know, I've been a telecommunications designer with Telstra, electrician, so industrial electrician, been a car salesman, been a computer salesman, been a
Car
bank.
salesman.
Yeah, I was a car salesman once. I was
Wow.
terrible at it, but because I didn't know anything about cars, I could just talk to people. And the
That's
idea is if you're a car
funny.
salesman, that you don't sell people cars, right? You just make friends with people
You sell
because
people
people
you
don't
sell
want to
people on
buy from
you.
car salesmen; they want to buy from their friend. They don't want to buy from
That's
car salesmen.
funny. I don't know. I've
So that's how that
That
works.
same producer that I talked about from the show, he was also a car salesman, and he was such a
Yeah.
car salesman. Like like
Yeah.
he's the one that like, it will sell you the freaking dodgy car or whatever, like, oh, it's
Yeah.
fine, like, whatever. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, yeah. I
But
had a
yeah,
car
it's
sales moment recently. I was at Avcon, and like so, obviously, you get different types of lightsabers, right? And I was at Avcon
oh,
selling
here we go.
lightsabers,
Now
and
we're talking shop.
I've got this really nice, like there's a nice replica, Return of the Jedi, um, yeah, Return of the Jedi. Return of the King. Anyway, the thing of Lord of the Rings as well. So there's a really nice replica Luke Skywalker,
Yeah, I saw
Return of
that
the
one. That
Jedi
one's really good.
lightsaber, but it has like this really quite a clunky thing with a big switch on it. And one of the parts, like it just naturally slides down where the button would be, like the igniter, right? It's got like this sliding facade. And when if you
Mm.
slide it down, there's a spring that just pops out like a little jack in the box. And so I've gone to show someone, like, and they've slid it down, as a big spring pops out. And I'm like, oh, like, no, it's not broken. That's just actually just the unfortunate design flaw of this thing. Like you got to explain to them, like, I'm just like, it just felt like one of those, like, you've got someone in the car and they're driving down the road, the wheels fall off,
And
and
it
you're
starts
like,
making a weird sound or
yeah.
something.
Yeah. So then obviously they casually put it down and then they walk away. But I'm
That's
not,
funny.
like that's the other thing. Like I'm not even there to sell lightsabers, really. I couldn't have cared less if I actually sold any. But
But you
we've got
did.
them there because they're a really great conversation piece to get people doing what I really want them to do, which is to sign up for like lightsaber combat, so I can put my
Yeah.
new game to the test. I still don't have enough bodies for that yet. I really need more meat bags for the war machine, right?
Oh, there we go.
You see what I did there?
Now you need to have the cosplay chick at the thing, and you need to do recruitment, and that's
I reckon it
hilarious.
might be a bit more successful than the military.
Yeah,
Uh,
right. That's funny.
I'll
But
put my
then,
stand right next to the ADF, and I'll be
but
like, "Why join these guys when you can join mine?"
so when I start seeing that, like, you've got these really fancy lightsabers, and you've got all this lighting, and you've got these venues and stuff like that, does that mean that somehow in the background you've been taking money from the ADF to recruit and train these kids like for the future wars, right?
Yeah, that's right.
you
Yeah,
end
so
up getting a
maybe
you end up getting a secret military contract to train up kids.
it's honestly at this stage, I think they'd just be paying me just to teach them some sort of physical movement. So when they do finally get conscripted, they won't just,
Yeah,
flake out
right.
or something. So it's just a matter of getting them physically active. That's where the real money's going to come in, right? The government needs to pay people like me to just get kids physically moving and away from devices. So
Well, that's what I'm. Well,
like
I'm not
when
getting them away from devices, but I am doing the physical
Well,
thing,
I mean,
right?
you're doing the two, right? Which is a really great way to do it. So get them physically moving with the devices, which is fantastic. So yeah,
That's funny. But
uh,
yeah, like what was hilarious is when I was in the military, the you there was this so obvious thing when you go to recruitment, you see like the first week and you're like, all right, well those are the jocks that clearly like they weren't even smart enough for a trade, so fuck it. Or like then there was the quite a lot of chefs quite a lot of chefs were like were in my intake, and I was like, oh god, so they've like, they've done the whole culinary school thing, whatever. They've got all this stuff and they do that, and they enjoy the work, and they enjoy the food, and they enjoy like making the things, and they do that. Then they get out into the workplace and they're like, this job sucks. I'm like, what the fuck did you think it was? Like, it doesn't get better. You're still serving people food. They're still treating you like shit. You're still in a hot kitchen every night. And then you have to clean the fucking kitchen. Then you go home and you make yourself fucking beans on toast and you go to bed and you wake up and fucking open the restaurant again. Like, of course. Like, at what point in your career as a chef did you think that it was going to get better?
that's one of the ironic things about chefs. Like, I had a cousin who's a chef, and he's in his 50s now. But like shows like Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen told you how crap being a chef was, but
Yeah.
at the same time it glamorized it. So a whole bunch
Yeah,
of
yeah,
people want to
yeah.
become chefs. It's
That's the
hilarious,
thing.
right? Like,
Oh, totally. Well, Carl as well, right? But
yeah,
so that was
yeah,
funny. So there was a lot of chefs in our intake, which I just found hilarious. And then yeah, and then there was like the you could see like that there was the foreign one or the shy one or like whatever, and it's like, oh, they're literally just here for citizenship. And then you find out that they can't swim and they have to pass the swim test to get in, and this whole thing. I wasn't a very good swimmer, but I managed to get in on my third try, so go figure. But yeah,
yeah.
what was funny is that yeah, like it was like so obvious who was there to try and get citizenship by being in the military. Really funny. Um
Uh,
but yeah, like because you've got had all these different career choices and stuff. What like could you pinpoint reasons why you changed careers, and could you
yeah,
pinpoint what you were valuing at the time, and sort of
absolutely.
like what you traded, like because I mean you probably could work out exactly how much money you traded for exactly how much autonomy, creativity, um
Yeah. Yeah. I've
control or
never been
power or whatever.
motivated by money. Yeah.
mm,
Despite being a car salesman, I've never been motivated by money. I've always been motivated by
Commission.
knowledge, like gaining experience and knowledge. And the moment that job put me into a position where I was not learning and not with the most boring work, there were times when I'll be working for a company and I would have had to have spent more time dealing with administration crap or HR crap or your standard wank corporate mandatory courses, right? Then actual work or actual problem solving. And the moment that happened, they lost me. I was like, no, I'm not engaged. I hate this. And like for someone who's got like the good kind of ADHD, which always forces you to constantly drive for more, like to build something, right? To find new challenges. That's
Diagnosed?
just oh no, definitely. Actually, maybe when I was younger, I was always
Maybe.
told I had ADHD in the sense of academic level ADHD, where I'm always just kind of my brain is pinging on fire all the time. So it's just if I don't have something to engage myself. And now I'm just saying this. Well, I learned at a very young age that if my kind of attention is flitted away in all these different things, then I don't get the same dopamine hits as if I were to set the task and then achieve it, and then I get the reward. And so I learned to almost like imagine your brain is on fire, right? And you have the ability to just focus it like a laser beam on something. So all that fire, all that intensity onto one thing, and then that
Adderall.
created a really great. Yeah, well, no, I've never used Adderall. No, God, no.
No, they call that
Um,
hyperfocus, though, right? Yeah.
yeah, well, I mean, like if you got ADHD, you can do that. You can achieve that. It's just a matter of setting yourself up small, achievable goals to start with. Get the dopamine hit, and then just biofeedback yourself, right, until you get to the point when you got that routine down pat. So, like one of the things I would do is, if I knew that I was going to get distracted, I would have 15 different things that I enjoyed set up, so that every time I just went from one thing to the other, I'd just be hopping around, slowly chipping away at every single thing until all of a sudden these projects started growing. And then some of them would even connect in all sorts of different ways, right? Like I think I've gotten around to children's illustrations. I think I've told you that.
Mm.
Music. So I learned guitar for those good couple of years where I was just smashing out guitar every single day. And then obviously martial arts. So you know, I don't want to ever limit myself. I want to be able to do
Mm.
everything. But of course, naturally, you're a human being. You do have limitations, especially when you become a family man.
Yeah.
But and so the one thing I've absolutely loved about this new venture is I'm unlimited, right? Like all of a sudden I can literally do anything from voice acting to drawing to
Mm.
web development to conceptualizing a game to writing books to creating graphic novel. I always wanted to do a graphic novel to doing the photo shoots, right? To going out and seeing people and running these events, to going to conferences, to chat to people. There's so much. There is so much
Mm.
there, and I have not yet found that I'm getting close to full on any of the ideas that I've got. It's just they're all waiting to
I
manifest
can't find
now.
this meme that we had the other day. Oh, I probably sent it to Jin. But the sentiment of the meme is basically the words were you can do anything, and there was like there's it's the graphic is like 5 big jugs of water, right? And it says you can do anything, and then underneath this you can't do everything. And the bottom graphic, it's got 5 mostly empty jugs of water, and then in the top one where it says you can do anything, it's got 4 empty ones and one nearly full. And that cut me kind of deep, actually. Like seeing that, I was like, oh, it's just like when I play every RPG and I'd spread my stat points too thin, and now I can't fucking open master locks, and I can't convince anyone to
Yeah.
do anything, and I'm a glass cannon, and and I have all these issues. And I was like, oh yeah, no, I don't like playing RPGs because you can't do everything. You only get so many stat points.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that's
like I
right.
definitely relate to that. And like um everybody like that misquotes the whole like jack of all trades, master of none, blah blah blah, like all that stuff. Because there's a fuller quote to that, right?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, you're right.
Um so I do get that a lot of like the oh, here we go. Jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. So that's that
Mm,
classic thing where people always take the first half of the quote and just take it as like gospel, and then they don't even know
mm.
that there's a second part of the quote because the other one is the customer is always right. But do you know the full quote?
No, I don't know that one.
The customer is always right in matters of taste. That's the full quote,
Mm.
and that is true because if you're making a product and nobody wants it, then the customer is always right. That doesn't mean the customer goes like, "No, this is broken. I
Yeah.
want a refund." That's not what
Yeah.
it
So
means,
you
right?
must do whatever the customers. I
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
got told the same thing today, and I'd been thinking about it on my way home. So the idea being that you can, the conversation come about knowing your consumer, knowing your customer, like do you know the people who want your product? And I was
Mm.
explaining to them that no, like I thought I did, but I actually don't know who my consumer is anymore. And he said the same thing, right? Like said how like um from a if you're making a product, you really ought to have that customer in mind. Otherwise, you're going to end up in a situation where you got a great product, but nobody actually wants it. And I struggled with that because again, I mentioned to you before that I'm not motivated by money, right? Like I'm motivated by the
Mm.
processes of learning. And it occurred to me, like, what if I actually got to this point where I make this crazy world that has fictional characters and stories and this whole game to it and
All the
martial
doubt
arts
sets
videos
in.
and all that stuff, and I've got all this amazing stuff, but nobody actually wants it. Would I be happy? Would I feel fulfilled? And you were saying before as well that you had written that personal list of still feeling a sense of success. And can you have that sense of meaning? And maybe again talking about ikigai, you've got to have someone that wants to pay you to do it. So at least you can get a crust, right? You can
Mm.
get some bread to keep yourself for the next day. But man, I tell you, I've never felt more fulfilled in my life with the work that I do than I do
Mm.
now. And if nobody consumed my product, I would still be really happy that I had made this insane world that I never thought possible that I could do. And in
Mm.
fact, it's only possible because the tools have become so readily available now.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
so
you've
yeah.
been able to multiply your effort.
Yeah, yeah, like uncapped. Like if you could say what are you fully capable of? If going to work and being worried that someone's going to consume your product itself becomes a limitation, are you truly living up to your full potential, right? Or like oh, I've got a messaging coming through. Like so if I was to try and focus on making a product that the algorithm is telling me is going to get picked up by people,
Mm.
am I being honest to myself? Am I creating something that is truly a real creation, or am I just is it all just data sets and I'm just being derivative because that's what's worked in the past and I just want to make money and like it doesn't
There
feel
is all
genuine.
that.
It doesn't feel
Yeah.
authentic.
There is all that stuff, right? Like I find that interesting. Like we both consider ourselves pretty intelligent people, right? And then you see all these like posts of people being like, I used AI to make Etsy products and I've made this amount of money and whatever and like all this stuff. And you look at all these things and it's like, I don't know, like in a weird way, I see the world as a game and doing that is cheating. I
Yeah.
feel like that's sort of the same thing, right? That it's like there are so many ways that I could make money, and yeah, I don't give a shit.
Yeah. I never thought, like, you want to talk about cheat codes and cheating in this world. I never thought that the term hot tour would land someone
Oh god,
millions of dollars in advertising and potential reality TV show. That is insane. That's cheat code,
yeah.
man. Like,
Well, all
it's
right,
like,
yeah. I'll give you my equivalent of the cheat code. Right, is that a friend of a friend, um, friend of no, yeah, friend of a friend is making a sex VR app, and I tried it, and I went, holy shit, this VR app is gonna make money, and it's terrible. I could make a VR app a million times better than this, and I know exactly what you would need to do, and it would be so easy. And then I'm like, but then I'd be the VR sex guy. And I'm
yeah.
like, I don't want to be the rich, successful, nice house, nice car, nice girlfriends, VR sex guy. It's
Yes,
like
the sex
I'd
guy,
much
right?
rather be the poor, failing VR semi fitness guy.
Yep. Yep.
It's that
Yeah.
weird thing, right? And like it's that definitely that thing of like not being motivated by money, like we've said. Um, but it is all those weird things where you sort of do end up just putting these like arbitrary restrictions on yourself because it's not fulfilling, right?
Mm.
Like when I was working for the military company, not a shout out, but I still have their drink bottle and it's my only souvenir of that time. Um when I was working for them, like I would get a paycheck of like $6,000 just drop into my account. And I was like, oh, like, the first couple of them, I was like, oh, holy shit, that's fucking awesome, right? And then the job got bad and like about all these emails and these meetings and all this shit that was going wrong. and everyone around me just, well, not everyone, but middle management being like just fucking shitting the bed. And I
Mm.
offered them like a perfect solution, and they're like, "Well, it wasn't our idea, so we're not going to do it." Type thing. That's like pretty much exactly what happened. Like, and the funny thing was like this was during COVID, so um, like I had nothing. And
Mm.
have I told you about the whole military thing? No. So
No.
I got, so after Japan, right? Like, because we were in Japan at the same time. I stayed a little bit long. I stayed an extra week, I think.
Mm.
Yeah, so
Mm.
I stayed an extra week or two, I think. But I was there like nearly a month. Um, and then so I stayed for a bit, and then I was in Tokyo, and I met some people, and I was hanging out with a bunch of Aussies that were there. Then I think a few of them left and kind of spread out, and then I hung out with some people that I met there for like sort of the last leg of the trip. Came home like broke as fuck. Like I had spent everything. And I was like, it's awesome because winter's about to start. And my like winter season for sport is like massive. Like it's regular work every weekend. It's like high pay, low hours. And that'll like I just gotta kind of get through this little rough patch, and then that happens. What happened when we got
Mm.
back from Japan? Freaking COVID,
Mm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like right as I got back, I'm like behind on rent and whatever, and then everything's cancelled, events, sports, everything, all my revenue streams. And like that's sort of how my business has been successful, is the fact that I have so many revenue streams. They're all little ones, but
Mm.
when one drops out, I can usually rely on the other one to pick up the slack.
Mm.
But they're all physical event things, so they're all gone, right? Now I'm like, fuck,
Mm.
I'm behind on my rent. What am I gonna do? Like, I might even have to go back to Weiler for a few weeks, or like basically wait for it to blow over, or everything like that. And like, I applied for a bunch of these like jobs that had come up before it like really hit, and I completely forgotten about them. And one of them was this military videography job, and the job was to like basically go out into like the bush and film dope like videos of trucks driving over like little jumps or whatever, and showing off all the features of these trucks. I'm like, that's gonna be fucking sick. And it was supposed to be like, it was gonna be awesome. The funny thing is they call them arousal videos. That's like the
Yeah. Yeah. That
technical
makes sense.
term. They call them arousal videos, which is basically like, yeah, big truck, give me $600 million for big truck, this truck better than other truck. um, so like that was like the job. And the funny thing is that had I done the job as a freelancer like I usually do, I would have charged them maybe like 15 grand, I think,
Mm.
probably. And it would have been like 1 week shoot, go to New South Wales or something, like stay there for like 3 days or whatever, get a bunch of footage, come back, edit it, 15 grand. And that's probably like, that was like good money for me. That's probably underselling myself significantly, but I would have wanted the job because like
Mm.
that's fucking cool. Who doesn't want to like
Mm.
go film fucking military shit? And like maybe we get a helicopter or something, you know what I mean? I'm like, I've got all the gear. That the really funny part about this like whole story is that when I had the interview for it, I had a pretty similar setup to this, but yeah, like what I did is I like did the interview, and I fully kitted my like interview setup out. So I had my little webcam. I put it on a tripod where I had a monitor, and it was at head
Mm.
height and then I like had an external monitor like all the way over here. And so I did like a completely reverse setup on purpose, because that means that they can see my computer. So then like as because I was sort of pitching for the job that was like sort of like um I think it was supposed to be sort of semi like remote. Like I wasn't supposed to be like as a proper, well no, what it was an employment contract, but it was sort of like you need to like sort of know what you're doing. So I set up the webcam over there, pointed it at my computer and everything, and had all my cameras all on my desk, like all my cameras and my VR headsets and all this stuff, like just showing that, like, oh yeah, no, I'm across all these different skills and whatever. And
Mm.
the guy who was like actually doing the hiring was like a prick and didn't like him at all. But the guy that was like the team lead we got along really well in the interview, and he was really cool. And then I completely forgot about the interview, and then COVID hit. I reckon I did it. I reckon it was before Japan. I actually think the
Oh,
interview was
right.
before Japan. So that was me coming off a big government gig, getting a bunch of money, and went, okay, Carl, I'm coming to Japan. I've got money now. I didn't have money before. Now I have money. Let's go. Then I met you. Then we went to Japan. I reckon I did the interview before I left. Completely forgotten about it. And then we come back from Japan. I'm broke as fuck. And I went to my landlord. I went, I can't pay rent. Here's what I'll do. I'll go move back to Wyler. I'll take some stuff with me. But just at least I'm not like costing you any utilities while I'm gone. And then we'll see how this goes. And then, like, maybe I'll come grab my stuff afterwards. So I was literally back in Wyler. And before that, I had filmed the Borderlands thing. So I was basically in Wyler with my computer at my friend's place, just like editing that, like, day and night, just like freaking crunching through all this green screen footage. And it was like a pretty weird lifestyle. But then, like, for about a month, I was there and sort of was getting really excited because all of my work was gone. That I was like, well, I guess I have to like try and make content on the internet to try and make some money. So then, like, me and him were like making all these plans, and like I was like, oh sweet, I can like dive into my VR game and actually make it, and we can make all this content around it, and we can like stream, and we can do all this stuff, and we can like make the music and like all of this, like, we can do a let's play channel or whatever. And we're like getting really excited about these ideas because we didn't have a choice. Like, what else were we gonna freaking do? And then right as all this, like, we were getting really excited about it and starting to plan stuff, I get this freaking email and phone call being like, all right, well, you got the job. I'm like, the fuck? And they're like, yeah, can you start April 26th? And I'm like, oh, okay. I guess I'll go back to Adelaide then, because this job is like, I mean, it was only a 6-month contract, but it would have been like a 75K a year job, so it was like good money. And I'm like, oh fuck, all right, well, those plans are out the window. Like, the money is too good. I can't say no to that. And then, like, so I kind of put everything on hold. Went back to this, like, went back to Adelaide and like signed the contract and everything. And then immediately as I did that, fucking whole world shuts down, and like the borders are closed and everything. And I'm like, who the fuck is hiring people April 2020? And like at that point, I was like basically like like I couldn't sign that thing fast enough because it's like, the fuck, you're offering me money to do a job that I probably can't do. And then so that was what was funny is that I did my orientation and everything. We get there and they're like, yeah, cool. So these are the different things we're gonna get you to do and everything, blah 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 blah. And then almost immediately someone comes in and goes like, oh, all those trucks that we're gonna get him to film, we don't have any of them in the state. We don't have any of them in this state, and the borders are closed. So they've now hired a professional videographer that now has no access to the thing they're supposed to film. And they ended up getting old 50-year-old mechanics with iPhones to film the footage between lessons because they're like instructors. And they would email the footage to me and I would edit them. Like, there was instructional content as well that was supposed to be done, but we didn't get to do the cool arousal video, which is the only reason I signed up for the job in the first place. Didn't get to do any of it. And instead they needed like 150 like instructional videos or whatever. But now they have a full-time videographer, like they have a professional videographer on staff, and it would take them a week to film enough content to keep me busy for a day because I would just churn the videos out so quickly. And then the funny thing is that our COVID wasn't very big. So about halfway through the contract, all my clients started coming back. But I now have a full-time job. And but at first it was great because it was mostly remote. and I would like jump into meetings and I'd be really proactive and I'd help out and everything. And then I would be like, all right, well, when the videos come in, I'm gonna make some videos. Like, cool. And so like that was fine. But then they like started getting like the middle management started realizing that like, oh, it really doesn't look like we're doing very much right now. Because they're not doing much. Like our team is like working and we're like absolutely kicking goals. Like the Commonwealth guys are like, this is the best product ever. Like they were loving it. But middle management is like kind of twiddling their thumbs in an empty office, being like, what the fuck do we do? Now that's it. Let's
Mm,
start getting people to come back into the office. They started
mm,
making everyone come back in for no reason, where I didn't have access to my, my awesome computer that I showed off in the interview that allows me to churn out videos really quickly. It took them like
mm.
weeks to get me a computer that worked properly that I could actually do stuff on. And they were basically making me go to the office every day to sit and wait for emails that I knew weren't going to come until next week. There's all this shit. Like it was so terrible. And so now I'm getting like $6,000 paychecks and I feel like shit. And then I'm sneaking off to go film a wedding, like to go live stream a wedding because it's COVID and like their family can't get into the state. So I live stream the ceremony and I get $600 and I feel like $1,000,000. Like I feel great because I went somewhere, I fixed a problem for someone, made
Yep.
them feel good, made their day, made their family feel good that like, that they all like were able to kind of share that moment and it was all there and it was live and we like did a really good job. And they just pay me in cash and I walk
Yep.
away
Yep.
like $600 meant nothing at that point because I was earning so much money, but I
Mm,
felt way better from that job than I did my actual job at the time.
yep.
And
Yep.
then I said to them, I was like, look, you keep not acknowledging that COVID is a thing and that we are behind schedule. And this entire project needs to be done by March, but you have me on full time until October, where we're not going to get all the video content that I need to make the videos in time. And I said to them, I was like, put me on for part time. If you change the remainder of my contract to part time, I will do 2 days a week, 3 days a week, whatever. I'll make sure that the work still gets done regardless because I'm highly efficient with
Mm,
with this style of work for sure. Like put me down, I'll still do the same workload, but put me on part time until March, and I'll assure that the project gets done because
mm.
the bulk of the video workload is going to be at the end of the project, not the extra last 4 months that you've got me on.
Yep.
But that would also allow me to then go fulfill my other client work that I've got because it's all coming back now because of COVID. And that way you've got your burn rate on the project is lower. And they were just like, no, no, you're not doing that. Your contract is over. We're not renewing you after October. Then they put my job up on Seek and everything, but they recontextualized it and made it like that you needed to be an e-learning specialist in order to do it. So that I was no longer
Mm,
qualified for the job, and they just kicked me out.
mm.
And it's like, and then so I just basically had to sit in the office for like a month, knowing that I'm not going to get what I need to do my job, and I can't do it from home for some reason. And I just basically have to sit in the office until the end of my
Yep.
contract. I was like, this is fucking bullshit. It's so bad.
Yeah, it's
But
bullshit.
that was the
Yep.
weird thing. That's like the biggest disconnect paycheck and like feeling that I've
Mm,
ever had
yep.
because I was like making good money. Um, but yeah, just like not enjoying the work at all. The only thing I was enjoying was sitting in the office 9 to 5 and then running off and doing video work for people that couldn't get it into the state. So I was stealing other people's work that they couldn't. Well, no, they stole it first because they shouldn't be traveling into the state just to. That should have
No.
been our job in the first. But anyway, and it's like so I was doing a full 9 to 5. Then I was stealing interstate video work back from interstate
Mm,
companies, doing those jobs, charging through the nose because it's COVID, and then like yeah, just like making bank. And I was making a fucking short film and stuff. So it was just really funny, really weird times.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, it was a very strange time. And now, of course, that $76,000 wouldn't even be enough now. Like, no way is that even a good salary anymore. Like, it's completely crazy, isn't it?
Oh, it's like it's
So,
blown out now for sure. Like
yeah,
it would have to
yeah.
be the equivalent of, yeah, 85 now, I think.
They say that minimum you need to be somewhere between 110 and 130,000
For what?
just to be able to live comfortably now.
Oh yeah, like
Yeah.
but yeah, so it
So,
was that real thing of like, this is the best job I've ever had, and
mm,
I'm tearing my hair out. And like, yeah, like it was weird. Like even the team lead, he was like, they were basically gaslighting him into like believing the project has been a failure. All these issues are
mm,
happening, even though the client was happy. Like,
yep.
but the company that he worked for was unhappy because we were too efficient. We were too in line with the client's needs and all this stuff. By the way, a German company. So
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
of course, right? So it was all this weird stuff, and that was the other thing that sort of irked me, was that they were prioritizing the company over the Commonwealth, and it's
Mm,
like, dude, my loyalty lies with the fucking Commonwealth and the
mm,
taxpayer. Like, I
yep.
don't give a shit
Yep.
how much these, how much these trucks are worth or whatever, or how much the e-learning part of these trucks is worth. It's like, you give you give our government the best deal you can. They're our fucking government. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that was the thing to me, that I was sort of like, I want no part in
Mm,
the wasting of government spending, because it's just, that's the way they do things, and they privatize and whatever. Like, so that was the other part that I sort of had a moral qualm with, the way they were running things, but I really loved the
that
way
that
that our team
is
was running things.
that is such a consistent thing across almost all big companies that I've worked for is just the waste. And, I think about how much work I can achieve with no money, right? Like with just bare
Mm,
bones, just doing it, but either by yourself or figuring out solutions that require like very little cost.
mm,
And I think like if I try and think to myself, like if I was to hire a team to do what I've done, what would that have cost me? And I certainly think that like just something even like something basic like your tax, right? Or here's a really good example. So I was trying to look at like legal documents for things like franchises and franchisees, or just a simple influencer agreement, right? Like, so say for example, you got to meet an influencer, you want them to speak your product, and so what kind of legal contract would you need for that? And like you can access pretty much almost all legal contracts online. Now, please, if anybody's listening, don't take anything I have to say as legal advice. Blah 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 blah. All right, you should be smart enough to know I'm not a lawyer, and don't take that as legal advice. But
funny.
you can literally just Google basic workplace documents for anything, right?
Mm,
And then you kind of you read through it yourself, make sure that
boilerplate,
it
yeah.
it sounds like it actually meets your needs. But 9 times out of 10, like what they would actually charge you, what a lawyer is going to charge you
Mm.
to do that, thousands of dollars. Like it is insane how much lawyers
It's
will charge
insurance,
you
right?
for really basic stuff. It is because the idea is they just want to cover their ass in case there's any kind of legal
Well, the
recourse,
only
right?
reason you would
But
hire
in the
them is
end,
to cover your ass.
but they make you sign a waiver as well. So like you sign a waiver to ensure that legal ramifications will be subrogated or go to your own insurance,
Oh Jesus. Okay.
like be paid out first. I
Oh,
mean,
the
these
the whole
guys are
point of
like
hiring a lawyer to write
sneaky.
up your contracts and documentation is so that if it doesn't
Yeah.
cover you properly, they're in
It's
the
just
thing.
layers on layers on layers on layers. So in the end, you'll still end up getting fucked. Absolutely.
Yeah, but that's
Um,
why AI is not going to screw you, is it? Right? And as long as it sounds
yeah,
legalese enough that it sounds scary to the client, then they're not gonna come and charge you either, right? There's this
yeah,
quote that
yeah.
keeps
That's
coming
right.
up. Bezos believes no matter how large a company gets, individual teams shouldn't be larger than what two pizzas.
Yep, agreed. Yeah.
And that's
In
that's
fact,
sort of that thing, right?
there's good psychology to suggest that the optimal team is between 6 to 12 people,
Yeah, I was
and
gonna
that
say that
if you
some of the
look at
best games
yeah,
lately, they've been between less than 15 people, the teams.
yeah.
And
part of that actually is an evolutionary
I
development.
was gonna
So,
say, I feel like that just stems from like the way we used to interact and run as like a village, right, or a pack.
yeah, yeah. Fun fact, for the Saber Skirmish, so I've been trying to get this whole model up where people have a faction. You belong to a faction, much like a team. And I specifically made it that you have to have between 6 to 11. As soon as you get to 12, then the faction has to split and then create a new kind of a new team, right? So my idea thinking that once you get past 11 to 12, you're going to start seeing more political kind of poison and kind of
Mm.
chaos happen. So if you separate them straight away as part, it's embedded in the structure, then people have more opportunities to become faction leaders themselves or clerics, which is like second in charge. And then there you kind of start to see this more hierarchical spreading of teams. It's not a pyramid scheme, I suppose, but I mean it could be. If you're really motivated to become a faction leader, then you want to recruit people so that you can split off your own faction, right? So in that sense, I guess it's a bit of a pyramid scheme.
Yeah, that's interesting. Of course, then you're missing out on the juicy drama.
I think most people can live without that.
You don't want
But
juicy Jedi drama happening in your,
uh,
because then they could have feuds and backstabs.
well,
So
that's
what
that's where they
you're
settle
saying?
on the battlefield, right?
You're saying the rule of two doesn't work politically? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, apparently most of the Sith have cheated on that. That's why they've always had this other dude just rock up in the wings somewhere. Like
Fucking
what the hell
Star
was the deal
Killer.
with Darth Maul and Count Dooku, or like, yeah, Stark was another one.
Well, he's
Anyway,
not canon.
yeah, yeah.
That's funny.
Uh,
Yeah, no, that is interesting. But yeah, like I feel like that is sort of how we naturally um collaborate. I feel like in those small acts, and like yeah, it's I've heard all of this rhetoric around specialization and how like, well, that's how we got to where we are, right? Like no no one person can make an iPhone, but a million people can contribute to making an iPhone or whatever it is. But like that stuff about like, yeah, you should specialize and whatever. And then you look at a lot of these people that they put on pedestals and no, they're a generalist. Like they're not a specialist. So your fucking point is moot, right? And like, what
yeah.
is it? Doesn't Steve Jobs wasn't Steve Jobs like he had a love of theater or something, or it was like completely. It wasn't tech. Like he wasn't a tech guy at all, right? All that shit. And I fucking hate. I think Woz did all the work.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep. Yep.
and like I just love Apple. They so
Mm.
the Vision Pro has just launched in Australia. You can now, well, you can't. Like no one can actually purchase it. But if you wanted to, you could, I don't know, go into credit card debt, whatever. It's gonna be like 6 grand. It is like 6. Yeah, yeah, it's brutal, absolutely brutal. Um, it basically does nothing. But it's the best at doing nothing. It is the best.
Mm.
Um, so they're finally out and they've just done the launch and everything. Um, funny thing is that the lovely, sleek, amazing, uh, crazy sci-fi tech knitted band that they've got on it. You know how it's sort of just that one shape that goes around the back of your head. Yeah, yeah. They've stopped using that head strap in in-store demos now. So they've put all this R&D and all this amazing stuff into this like gorgeous headset that has like the amazing, band and everything on it. And they like invented a manufacturing process in order to create this solo knit strap. Um, and then immediately realize it's not comfortable.
Mm.
Nobody wants to wear the damn thing with that head strap on. Even at when they were showing the thing to press, they'd added a top strap to it as well. So like
Mm.
basically trying to sell a headset that doesn't have this bit and just
Uh,
around, but this isn't made of
yep.
hard plastic. It's made of like a woven knit thing. And
Right.
then when they showed the press, they realized the press didn't like it. So then they basically last minute kind of hodgepodged one of these on there and then so then it was a combination of the solo knit and the top strap,
Mm.
which they never released, and then they have another different one band that looks way worse and has a back strap and a top strap. That's the one they've started using in in-store demos now, which is just hilarious. So they've put all of this money in R&D into this like crazy looking sci-fi thing that looks gorgeous, and oh, the design of it's incredible. Not functional. Nobody likes it,
Mm.
and is now a detriment to the product.
Mm.
So now they actually have to eat their words and put a proper strap on it. And it's like, okay, cool. So you're the innovator. You're Apple. Fuck it. We've had headsets for 10 years. We know you need a fucking top strap, and yours is heavier than all of them. You have the heaviest headset that has ever existed. And you're like, no, we don't need a top strap. Like, fuck's sake. And like, oh, it's made with aluminum and glass and has an outside screen and all this shit. And it's like, yeah, cool.
Mm.
So it's heavy as fuck. Doesn't last very long at all. All this shit. And then they've had to walk back the fucking head strap thing, which just like the best Schadenfreude ever. Like,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Anytime Apple has to eat their own fucking words about their design choices, that's a good day.
Yep.
Having said that, I am trying to get hold of one for our next VR meetup, because I really want to try it, and I want
Yep.
more VR devs to try it. And they've already walked back that they're gonna have to they're not working on the next version of it now. They've scaled back production, and they are working on a cheaper version. So they're going to do
Right.
like the non-pro or the Vision S or whatever next. They're going to have to reduce the weight and the performance of it and the cost of it, because they've basically, they know no one's going to adopt it at that price, so they're gonna have to cut back and make it better and better. But it's a
Mm.
Gen 1 product, and Apple Gen 1 products are basically useless, but very cool and very with it and now for about a year. So congratulations to anyone in Australia who lined up outside of Apple stores today. There was an article saying like, this is the reason why people were late to work, and it's because they lined up for their fucking $6,000 mixed reality headset. That
Can't be in a living crisis. Can't be in a living crisis. If you can spend 6,000, that is
no, no, no.
insane.
We are in a living crisis. They're not. The people that are buying fucking Vision Pros are not.
No.
That was the weirdest thing during COVID. Is so then after the I had such a weird couple of years where I just constantly got jobs that paid so well I couldn't not do, and I really wanted to be doing what I'm doing now. That's the weird thing, right? And there's been multiple times when like I got all geared up to be like, no, I'm going into full production of my game. I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be doing YouTube. I'm going to be streaming, all of this stuff. And then someone's like, well, yeah, but you should come here and we'll offer you all this money. And I'm like, oh fuck, all right, fine. So I did the military one. I did a really cool government job before that, which was awesome. They paid me up. That allowed me to go to Japan. I got back to the military job, um, and then after that, I got a job doing volumetric capture. So that was this really cool gig that we were doing. It was actually upstairs where the lab is, where what you're talking about today. So
Mm.
upstairs there, they had this giant 3 meters by 12 curved LED screen. So they were up there doing that, and then there was another company where they had this like basically green screen box. And do you remember like the Xbox Connect?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So Microsoft realized that camera technology has way more use in military and industrial and enterprise users. So that's why they sort of slowly tried to kill it and didn't release any good games for it. And then they rejigged it for military use, and now it's called the Azure Connect. Um, so these
Ah,
guys had 10 of those in the green box, and they would shoot from all directions at once. And because it's like a depth sensing camera and an RGB camera, you could turn someone into a 3D model 24 frames per second. And then you could
yep.
basically do VR films, right? Full 360.
That's
You
cool.
could walk around, everything. So these guys were playing with that tech. Interesting stuff. Super early. Nobody knew how to use it. And then like, yeah, they had this shoot lined up. They'd already oversold their capability to the client, and then the guy that was there like calibrating it for them was like, "Oh, you need a video guy? I know a video guy." They was like, "Come check this thing out." So I went and checked it out. I was like, "Look at all these fucking awesome toys. This is amazing." And then they were like, "Okay, cool. So here's our problem." And I went, "Oh, yeah, no, you don't need a video guy. You need a video guy, a post production guy, a VFX guy, a game developer, a programmer, and a graphic designer. You're in luck. I'm all of those things. Here's my rate." And I basically just like, I just upped my rate by 1.5 times and was like, this is what you need. And they were like, done. And I'm like, fuck, I could have went double. So that's the rough part. But it was super cool thing. Like we were playing around with this crazy shit. And then I I learnt everything that the guy that was telling me what he knew. I learnt everything that he knew. And then the next day I was on a call to New York. Were with the software developers that were still working on the software that we were working. And by day 2, I was in a group of people of about 5 people that actually knew everything about volume capture. So it was like I went from not knowing what the thing was. Day 2, I was one of the 5 experts in volume capture. So that was crazy. And then I was like, oh, okay, cool. All right, we need this, and this. Otherwise, we can't finish this film. And
Mm,
the software needs this capability, and it needs this, that. And they went, okay, cool, we're working on it. We'll send you an update later in the week. I was like, oh, fuck. All right, here we go. And then the project fell apart. Yada yada yada.
mm,
But yeah, we were upstairs playing with all that cool tech. And then again, I was like, oh, sick. Started working with those guys and like coming up with all these really cool ideas to show off the
mm,
space and everything. And like similarly, it was like, well, that wasn't our idea, so we're not going to. Okay.
mm.
And weird COVID bullshit happened as well. But it's just funny that like it's you'd think that like because Adelaide is such a condensed space.
Mm,
But you would think that following the money is like, or like when the money goes up, you think like, oh, cool, like success and like opportunities and
mm.
like there's gonna be almost any time that I've been earning good money, I've either been stationary or going backwards. Like I
Yep.
haven't been like
Yeah.
actually progressing, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. 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 I got to say, for all the work that I've done, all the different jobs I've done, I've never felt like any of the income that I've earned has been like it's anything to really be that excited about. Like it's not like it's allowed me to go, okay, well now I'm going to put that towards intergenerational wealth or maybe into stocks or shares or something like that. It's always been
Mm.
just enough to cover debts and maybe entertain yourself for a bit, and then it's gone, right? Like that's it. So like,
There's always a
I mean,
level
I'm
of
now
like
what?
living within your means, though. Like it does adjust.
For sure. And I like to think I've always pretty much done that. But like, I mean, even when I was an industrial electrician, like, and this is a place that makes good money. So I'm only making 70 to 80 grand, right? Like, so it
Mm.
wasn't that much. And when you've got like, dependents that you look after and stuff like that, yeah, I wasn't that good.
Mm. But what was funny is when I was at that job, which is the reason I told the story in the first place, was that that's when I saw what real money is. And that was the weird
Mm,
thing is that the guys that were walking through that place when like the owner was showing people around,
mm.
that was when I realized that um there are a lot of millionaires in Adelaide.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
are a
But they
lot
don't
of
make their money
multi-million.
from doing
Yeah, they don't
their
make it here though. They
Yeah,
make
they
they
don't they
make it
don't
over
make
there.
money doing what we do. No, they have literally things that make money for them, right? Like there's this old saying, you don't work for money, you make money work for you.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
so yeah, once you get it, you've got to invest. You got to, but again, now how do you invest even in this market, right? Like I
Yeah.
keep getting told that you can make money in a declining market. But
By
geez, I tell you
shorting.
what. Well, day trading will kill you, man. The stress that's involved in day trading is just too much. I tried it with
Oh,
Bitcoin
the only
era,
way to
and
make money is to forget that
yeah, yeah.
and like luck out or buy gold, I guess, but that's boring. No, but it was
Yeah.
crazy. Like they were these money people were rolling through, and I was like, oh, so like, what do you do? Blah blah blah, and they're like, oh yeah, I have multiple startups. I do all this blah blah blah. Used to work for this company called Siri. Oh fuck me. And like during COVID, they were all just hiding here. All of them. They all have places up in the Adelaide Hills or the Barossa or whatever, and they were
Yeah.
all just hiding in Adelaide because there's no lockdown, right?
Yeah.
Someone, I almost believe that someone gave them the fucking heads up. Like those in the
Mm.
know were like, get the fuck out of LA, get the fuck out of SF. Shit's coming, or they just flew private and they didn't abide by the
Mm.
laws or whatever. But they all like holidayed in Adelaide, or they literally have always been like chilling here when they're not
You
working
know,
and stuff like that, like 4 months of the year or whatever, just chilling in the Adelaide Hills, waiting for it all to blow over. But
mm,
they all make their money in the US. Or the owner of that building as well, he made it in Hong Kong,
yeah.
in tech stuff. But it's just crazy. But yeah, there are like the reason Australia is so fucked is because there are so many rich people just chilling in here that you just don't know about. They're just
So,
hanging out, and they all
so
vote
that's
the
from what I
same way.
understand. From what I understand, South Australia itself has got like crazy, insane military contracts. Like we're such a huge military research hub, and
Yeah, yeah.
I heard somewhere that we actually have an iron dome that protects Adelaide, and it does make you wonder, like, what
An
actually? Because I
Iron
mean,
Dome.
yeah, Iron Dome so system, which is a massive missile system that protects us.
Oh Jesus.
Um,
Well,
yeah, and
there's that military base in the middle of Central Australia that directs
yeah,
all the drones.
yeah, and of course, geologically, we're pretty protected actually, because you got to come all the way around this massive landmass just to get
Mm.
to Adelaide, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it
yeah.
does make you wonder what
That
they've actually got here. Maybe,
because Adelaide was a military base, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
when the South Australia Company came to SA, they picked the most defensible position in the area. So that's
yeah,
why. So Adelaide CBD is the most defensible position. That's why King William Street and everything is as wide as it is, because that's where you would roll the cannons. And the parklands around the outside of the CBD is exactly the range of a 50-pound cannon.
mm,
So those would be the killing fields. You would be in the CBD, you'd defend the CBD, and your cannons would reach out to the parklands. That was like the idea. So that's why Adelaide CBD is planned so well, is because it was basically a military base. Company came over here,
mm.
which is just
So again, there's another thing I only just heard
weird.
about that down, yeah, down south. I think it was Mitcham area. There's another suburb down that way, which is called like a garden estate or something like that, which was back in World War One. Actually, was this massive military base, and it now has become one of the world's very few historical heritage garden like suburbs. So I don't know
Oh,
what
weird.
the term is. I might just look it up. My computer doesn't freeze. There we go. Um,
Yeah, it was kind of interesting, like hearing stuff about that with like history of stuff, because there's like you don't really hear about it, and like you think that like, oh, it's that everyone learns like the convict story, but that wasn't the story of South Australia at all.
mm,
Like South Australia was a venture. It was like, gonna we're gonna move some of our company here and see profits and whatever. Super interesting stuff. It
yeah,
was
so
like,
Goodwood Road.
oh,
It
there you
looks like
go.
Goodwood Road was an army training camp during World War One, and was previously known as Grange Farm. So it was, yeah, called a model garden suburb, which I don't understand what that is. But the government decided to establish it as a model garden suburb following New Zealand town planner Charles Reid's 1914 Australian town planning tour. South Australia appointed Reid as a town planning advisor in 1916. He became South Australia's first official town planner. Well, that's nice to hear. But what is this? So I'm going to look this up. Model garden suburb, Mortlock. So William Tennant Mortlock, which is interestingly going to be the new location for one of our training areas for saber combat,
Oh,
is
there you go.
Mortlock Park.
Hmm.
Garden City Movement. The Garden City movement was a 20th century urban planning movement promoting satellite communities surrounding the central city and separated with green belts. These garden cities would contain proportionate areas of residences, industry, and agriculture. Ebenezer Howard first posited the idea in 1898 as a way to capture the primary benefits of the countryside and the city while avoiding the disadvantages presented by both. In the early 20th century, Letchworth, Bentham Garden suburb, and Welwyn Garden City were built in on or near London, according to Howard's concept, and many other garden cities inspired by his model have since been built all over the world. So a
So this
garden
guy
city,
was
well,
playing
well,
SimCity and he was trying to min max
yeah.
the employees like satisfaction meter or something. So
Mm,
like not one big city, but like multiple satellite cities that are self sustaining, but like connect. That's interesting. Yeah, I do feel like
mm,
Adelaide has that thing even now, right? Is that you have all these areas like everyone has a shopping center near about them that go in and out of the city.
mm. I hope
It's
you can
weird
still hear
shit.
me. It looks like my computer has completely frozen itself. I
Oh
don't know
really?
what
I
is
seen you
going on.
post the thing
Yeah.
in Discord, but I can still see and hear you.
Yeah. Am I moving on the camera?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's still
Huh,
everything's all
fascinating.
fine. So you're
So,
probably one of those weird freezes where it's still working. It's just
mm,
we'll see.
okay. Hilarious.
Yeah, it's that stuff is like super weird. The weird thing is here's like here's our like we're getting old. Is I've heard the kids have started calling 20s.
Uh,
Like
mm.
we're in the 20s now because it's too hard to say 2020.
Well, that's fitting. I mean, we're probably going to be going through a depression pretty soon. So,
Yeah, and that's the weird thing, right? Is that it's sort
mm,
of weirdly in a historical loop that
mm,
you look at what was happening in 1920 and what's happening now, and you go, oh, okay, all right, that's kind of scary. I mean, the same thing with the plague, everything
mm,
else, and you're like,
yeah,
okay, but it's like it is that weird thing where it's yeah, like we were actually a part of the previous century, and now it's
yeah,
like it's starting to feel very, very different, and like with the acceleration of technology stuff, like our childhood just seems so much further away than realistically should.
mm,
And there's this weird like nostalgia for a
yeah,
time when we were constantly connected, right? And I feel like the next generation is not going to have that. They, I don't know. I mean, I guess people still go camping, but I feel like it's going to be a very different thing, kids, as they grow
mm.
up now.
They're
Like,
born and shaped by this post-pandemic economic crisis world, right? And so they're going to
mm,
have a set of values that reflect the pragmatic decisions that we have to make today, not the ones that we would have made when we were younger. So we have that. Actually, what was I going to say? That's right. There's Do you know much about the Arthurian legend of Camelot?
only like through pop culture.
Yeah, yeah, pop culture references. Like pretty much wherever you look, there is typically a mythos or mythology of some classic golden era where people, the kingdom is at peace and people have law and growth and economic prosperity.
Make Camelot
And
great again.
well, yeah, that's right, you know. So, and then at some point, Camelot falls into despair, and you know the knights are at each other's throat and all that stuff, or you know, kind of get lost on the quest for the Holy Grail. But the point being that we have
Is
in
the
our
Holy
minds
Grail
this time.
the Crusades of killing all the Muslims? Is that was that the Holy Grail?
Mhm. I think it's probably more to do with this restoration of the sovereignty of the Kingdom of Camelot and what it was supposed to be, and so maybe a look for legitimacy and you know divine authority. But anyway, the to not I guess it's kind of tangential to what I was just about to say, which is that you know you and I growing up in the 1980s or 90s, we saw a
Yes.
time when we were still very much on this economic prosperity and neoliberal policies were having a
Well,
massive
we were
effect.
like basically
Um,
like it was like the tip of the boom, right? It was the 90s.
Yeah.
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 And then it started declining like 98.
Yeah. So now we have a nostalgia for a time when things were optimistic and positive and looking really, really
Mm.
good, right? For opportunities, whereas now we're seeing nothing but
Like music
this
was
kind of
positive, man.
crap. Yeah, and it's like the musical chairs. Music has stopped, and now you got to find a chair. But because we had that, that's something that we can carry with us. This Arthurian legend, this of the time of a golden past. Whereas the generations growing up today don't have that. They don't have that same concept that there could have been this better time. They wonder about it, they hear about it, and all these kind of memes that are being spread around, but they don't want to know what they look like. So they have to now contend with the world as it is, and they will have very different values to us, right? Like they will,
Mm.
their values are not informed by a better time. Their values are informed by the crap time that they have to live through now.
That's interesting, right? Because like, so my grandmother is 90,
Mm,
and she grew up in terrible times, Slavia type thing. Like, literally remembers like the times when the Germans came through, that like proper shit, and like they they had land, but it was fucking worthless, and they had to work so hard to get anything. Proper poverty, and now she's essentially wealthy on a on full pension, and is still living like she's gonna be broke tomorrow. At
mm,
any moment it could all go away. That's really interesting to me, but it's so frustrating to deal with because it's
mm,
like, you know, it's this weird thing where it's like I'm I shouldn't be like envious of a retiree because they're on like a stable income, and
mm,
and our government is supporting them, supporting us, never supported us properly. It's that
mm,
really weird thing. And then it's like, okay, cool. So it takes like, I think it's like something like takes 30 young people or whatever to pay for, or it takes 5 or 8 or whatever. There was a number. I used to know the number. I don't remember the number anymore. I think it's like 8 people. It takes 8 young people, working people to support like one retiree or whatever.
mm,
Um, and it's this whole
mm,
situation. And then they wonder why we don't want to fucking work,
mm,
because not only is the retirement situation only going to get worse because our advances in medical and stuff like that is going to mean they live longer, but
mm,
also we're going to have to work longer because they're going to raise the retirement age, and there's probably going to be nothing fucking left by the time we retire anyway.
mm.
So it's that really, yeah, like the I don't know, it makes me very nihilistic and like
Yeah,
not looking forward to that prosperous tomorrow, because I don't think some big things need to change before that happens, right? And it is
yeah.
funny that you look at a lot of culture and stuff from the 70s, 80s, and stuff that we sort of cursory like grew up with, just because that was the stuff that our parents grew up with and brought into our lives as we were being raised and that. And I always find it so funny that like I'd love to see like the Venn diagram of like how many punk songs talk about revolution,
Mm,
and how many people actually even know what that
mm,
means or what that would mean, or like, yeah, like the fact that why do we need a revolution and all of this. Like I don't know if we actually thought about that properly,
mm,
but would listen to all the music and would know all the lyrics, but never actually thought about it. It was like, why does this music exist? What brought on these
mm.
thoughts?
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, it's more relevant now than it is when we were listening to it.
We see that's the thing. What they were revolting was like they're talking about a time when it's after the war. You had people who lived a certain way for pragmatic reasons, right? You had no you didn't have no fault divorce because in things like women weren't in the workforce because there was no maternity leave. Maternity leave didn't exist. There was no pill. right? There was no birth control in the sense that they have today.
Mm.
And so, and not to mention that if a woman did get pregnant, she was unable to work, which means there was the reliance on the husband. So if she had have left, she was already in a financially terrible state because there's no real welfare like the way that we have it today. So
Mm.
there was a pragmatic way of living that had built itself up, that we take for granted today, in the sense that we have all access to all these other things that enable an individual to make very individual decisions. And they could, a person today could just leave their family, not have any concern whatsoever, right? Um, Whereas that was not possible before. And so then
Mm.
after World War II, when you start to see this huge movement away from nations towards economic zones, and the birth of civil liberties and stuff like that, the revolution for the boomer generation is a cultural one. It's one that's riding on the coattails of economic growth, more importantly, because it's only economic growth that allowed them the individual liberties that they were also championing at the same time. So, now that that economic growth is dead,
Mm.
um, we have this weird situation where we accept the values that were given to us from civil liberties movements and stuff like that, but we're going to find things very hard to justify, or maybe there's a certain level of decadence, like, that will start to come to a hard wall, right? Like, say, for example, do we live in a society that values mediocrity and what I would say the day policies over true innovation, or frugality, right? Like, so if you're frugal, if you're making sure you make every buck last, that's a good thing for us, right? But not
Mm.
necessarily was it a virtue if you're living in an economic boom? Is that something that's going to be celebrated, right? It's going to be more about individual freedoms, and making sure that you can consume anything that you want. Or, say, for example, if
Well,
you've got a
because
society that
like
is,
had a burgeoning middle class.
yeah,
That was
this
that
is a
like
good
keeping up with
example.
the Joneses type thing.
Grant scholarships, right? Grant
Oh, okay.
scholarships. There are no grant scholarships for people like us, none at all. But if you meet certain classes of an underprivileged or underserved class, there are. But the question is, do the scholarships that are given in those situations, are they actually producing quality innovation? Is there can we look at the data that suggests that all this say 90% of grant scholarships and funding that is going to underserved and underclassed people, is that producing a return for us as a society? And I would argue that it's not. I would argue that now as well, now that the economic brakes are being put on, there's going to come a point when they're going to, wait a sec, there's no real return here. Why are we handing out these scholarships? Is it just that we're fleecing students? That we want to say to every single student out there, go to a university, you can do it, so that way we can take $20,000 to $30,000 in HECS debts off them. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make it look even more accessible for people who are living in poverty, because now we can say, look, here's a $3,000 scholarship because you're an underserved class, and we want to give you the tools necessary for you to be able to go and accumulate HECS debt. I mean, go to university, right? Where are If you're in a society where every single dollar is going to get counted now, where are the scholarships that are going towards those that we know are going to have a really good return through innovation and developing new products and actually pushing us to the fore? Um, I think that's going to be an interesting conversation in the next 10 years, especially as universities find it harder and harder to justify charging as much as they do, or students start going, I'm not going to go to uni because it's just going to be debt for the rest of my life, right? Um,
Yeah, it's really interesting because I don't even think it's as deep as all that. I feel like a lot of the scholarship stuff is almost like a class reparation way. It's
it
that
is.
like sort
It
of
is.
we're investing in equity. Like we're gonna make things better because things aren't fair, and so we're gonna make them slightly fair, slightly more
Yeah.
fair. Problem is that the bar is set so low that it doesn't matter how much help you're going to give certain people, they're not actually going to be able to climb out of that and get back to zero. And then you don't give people help that are at zero, because then they might then they might do something and they might be dangerous. Like, you know what I mean? So I mean, it's a very cynical and skeptical view of it. But it's like saying, "Oh, we need billionaires because they give a lot of money to charity." It's that side of things, right? It's like
Yeah.
philanthropy is just a tax break,
Mm,
and it keeps the status quo rolling, and
mm,
the rich people will probably do something worth at some point.
mm.
They won't do it without profit margin, but
No. So I think that this will be a conversation that as it becomes harder and harder to get access to funding from government or like, basically just the taxpayer has just dropped off, right? So there is no money coming in. That the question of reparations, which it's right, it's reparations, that's going to become harder and harder to have. Like they're going to it's going to find it very difficult to justify having scholarships that effectively don't really go to anywhere. They don't do anything. They just support mediocrity and or people who will do the first or second year of university and then drop out, right? Like
mm,
that's generally what happens. So it's wasted money, right? Um, so, but well, I think we're
I
another
don't
10
have a
years
lot
away
of
from that.
faith in the academic process anymore anyway. Um and we are sort of seeing this thing where it's not um like, because I've got lots of friends that work at the university, and they can barely hold on to their job, and the universities are struggling to get talented people into the roles because there's no job security and pay isn't that. So the dilution of academic talent and and the quality of the teaching and the quality of the curriculum and everything has gotten so bad that it's probably not worth it for most people.
Yeah, it's not.
Especially with online and that happening, COVID as well, was that then essentially when COVID was happening, you were now you could now go to any university in the world. It was the same. It was literally the same process. It doesn't matter if you were at fucking Berkeley, you were still learning via fucking Zoom.
Mm,
So why would you then want to go to Uni SA or
mm,
Flinders if most of your classes were still going to be external anyway, when
yeah.
you could go to whatever school, right? And so that sort of everything. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, fine. Why would I go to, and like, I know quite a few people that have done online stuff, and usually it doesn't have very good staying power, but if it's significantly cheaper, then
Mm,
why wouldn't you, right? And then what's stopping for people just like that are successful to be like, well, I'll just make a course then and I'll just sell that, right? I feel like the digital education revolution is massive.
yeah.
And then the similar thing, right? Like you only get access to your professor between whatever hours or whatever. But instead, if you bought a mentorship, there that person's brand and that person's business success actually relies on and the future success of their students. So
Mm,
that has a better incentive program for them to actually help for you. So I would also say
mm.
that doing something as like a college or like an online mentorship thing would actually have more benefit to it. So I
I wonder what
definitely
else.
see a revolution in academia for sure.
Yeah.
And like yeah, like I don't even I personally just don't in that system. I mean, I guess it's supposed to be like a verifier, right? It's supposed to be like a check and a balance. That it's like, oh, if they've got a PhD, then that's something of um of prestige and value, and there's like sort of been a vetting process. But I'd rather talk to someone who has a successful company PhD.
Mm, yep. Yep. What does I think this is where it starts to line into micro credentials, right? So this
Micro
whole there's this.
credentials.
Have
That's
you seen this?
hilarious. No,
Oh, okay. I thought you knew that. This is a
no,
thing
that's funny. Is
where
my LinkedIn
um
micro credentials?
yeah. So
Because my
LinkedIn is one of the
LinkedIn
ones
is
that
like
championed this.
stupid.
Yeah. All right. Um, pretty sure that's the term.
So if I go to my LinkedIn profile, because I don't use it very much at all. My fucking thing is so stupid. I have 11 experiences. I used to be a Seaman GX of the Royal Navy. I used to be a martial arts instructor at Budokan of Australia. I used to be a technical officer at Uni SA. I used to be a videographer, content creator at South Australian Cricket Association. I used to be a live stream director at Channel 44. Used to be a videographer slash e-learning content creator at Rheinmetall. I used to be a volumetric capture production editor at Imagine Room. I am still a freelance photographer. I am now a VR game developer. I am now self-employed as Toaster Face Games. and I made that thing just to update it. And then like all of these people like thumbs up my like congratulations on the new job. I'm like, thanks. I made it myself. It's such a like weird like circle jerk thing that I thought was so funny is all these people like obviously just thumbs upping, like just clicking the default
Yeah.
button, but it's like congrats on your new role. Like it's the pretty half-ass congrats if like I just made up a word and then called it a company and then said I am now the director of said company.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are those micro qualifications is what you call it?
Yeah, micro credentials. That's right. So
Micro
like,
credentials. I like that.
but this is exactly it. Like, we get a mentor. I could imagine an entire economy of mentors selling their brand for. But what you notice is that something that starts very good, right, and has good quality to it over time just gets exploited to the point where you're just paying like a token amount for a hour for this person's time only to get that micro credential, right? So then you can say, well, I was mentored by so and so. And then again,
But
purely pyramid
you're buying
scheme.
a ticket to their network.
You are, yeah,
Right.
assuming that of course that network's going to, it's only the brand though. It's only saying you want that little logo that says that yes, we're connected, we're affiliated. So then
Anytime
others
I
will then look at you as being in that circle.
yeah, anytime I like get asked the question, because I do get asked quite a lot, is like, oh, my son's into this and my son's into that. What would you recommend? And the issue with like something like filmmaking, in particular, it's a team sport. And
Mm,
so unfortunately, for something like filmmaking, um, I would say the curriculum is bad. The like the academic process is bad. The degree is useless. But being in a room with 300 other students that all have similar passion and having facilities and access to equipment and time is valuable. That's the only
yeah,
thing that's valuable. You could get the same thing from any kind of like vet college or private course. So you don't need the degree at all. For something like game design, so that I would recommend, and I do, just recommend people like join the Facebook groups and come to meetups and you don't actually need
yep.
the formalized knowledge. You can learn all of it online. Issue being is that you do need to be dedicated enough and you do need to
Mm,
be like um you do need to be self motivated.
mm,
And more and more obviously like I feel like almost sometimes I feel like I'm fucking surrounded and it's where uh the quote unquote normal people are the minority and the neurodivergents are not the minority. It feels like, especially in the industries that I'm around. But I feel like more and more we're like catering things and learning how those people tick, and it is very much that thing of like follow your passion. Passionate about it, your brain is telling you like that you want to pursue it, so
mm,
do that, right? I was listening to
mm,
a podcast about a guy that's working on really cool games and stuff like that, and that was literally him. He was like, "Well, I really like video games. I'm gonna write reviews on video games." And then this guy who like worked for a magazine was like, "Your video game reviews are really good. Uh, you should start asking for copies of games before they come out so you can review them." And then it like went from that to like, "Oh well." You should come work on this game. You should come do this, blah, blah, blah. And like all just stepped up from there and he just continually followed his passion. Um,
mm.
And there are so many stories like that, right? And similar like what we were talking about before, where it's like we don't follow the money, we follow our passion, and our passion has gotten us further than any job we've taken for money
Yeah.
has. So
Yeah.
that's that sort of loop, right? So I feel like the academic process is not helpful, but access to resources that you need to do certain jobs is. So I feel like the knowledge and the information is basically free now. We have the um like access to equipment and fees. I feel like is the only thing we have left. Um, that is of a need, and I feel like yeah, academia is falling behind front for sure. And I feel like kids growing up now are probably going to grow up seeing their family, seeing their parents in debt, and aren't going to
Yeah.
want that life.
Yeah.
And if they see where growing up in debt gets you, I don't think they're going to want to pursue anything like that. And I think they'll prioritize the now.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's quite possible. I mean, if you've got nothing else, then you're going to prioritize certainly what you can get. If you can't plan for the future and set money aside and do these things, you mentioned before about this idea of revolution and whether people really knew what they were talking about when they were kind of going over these songs about revolution. And
Mm.
I think that Tracy Chapman song, right? Like it's, that song Revolution. But like, what actual revolution look like is literally those kids growing up, seeing things taken away from them for no reason at all, right? So we were talking about the idea of reparations as well, but you're talking about now reparations being taken from the forgotten class, right? The people who are growing up with nothing and are still being told that they must give more. And so from that's going to come a lot of hate, a lot of anger, which it already is actually. It
Yeah,
already
it
is.
already is.
The
Like
you
the
look
the
at
housing crisis
yeah,
right
yeah.
is the front line right now. I mean,
Also the
there's a guy out there
pandemic.
giving tips on how to squat
Yeah, yeah,
because
saw that.
like that's pretty much where we're at
Yep.
now. Like there are people sitting on properties that are abandoned for over 10 years, and he's like, "Fucking go live in it.
But
Do you
the
do?"
anger isn't the anger isn't just coming from the social left either. Like it's if you did you see the French election that occurred recently?
Ginny's been following it. She's been explaining it to
Yeah,
me a little bit. We've had to like basically just use Australian terms,
mm.
but basically what like they were about to swing really far left.
No, the opposite. So Marine Le Pen has
They managed. It was like
won
a
the populist
hung
vote
parliament though.
in every single French state. She won the populist vote in every single French state except one.
Yeah, right.
And so, but saying that, Macron was very, very clever. What he's done is he knew he was going to get absolutely smashed. That the center is dissolving, right? Like
Mm.
the before you had the center had most of it, now it's just kind of shrinking to this. And so, by doing what he's done, we're calling a snap election so early. He's effectively created a hung parliament, which means that even though you've got this massive now pull from the socialist left, but also a massive pull from the right, he's almost kind of like a Three Stooges door jam kind of situation, so nobody can really get an inch in anyway. But I think that situation is going to drastically change, and I think that the center is going to get taken out. And when it does, you're going to see more polarization to the extremes. And so you're going to have obviously the anger coming from the socialist side, but you're going to see anger coming from the identitarian side as well. So you're going to see a great deal of more identitarian politics. I mean, just recently, the head of the French left party that has done so well, the very first thing he said was that they're going to make Arabic an official language of France. So
Oh,
there's going to be a huge backlash against that. I can guarantee
that's
you that you will see. No, definitely not. We're talking about the country, the land of Charlemagne, right? Like the huge, rich history of a particular identity,
mm.
so I think that you're going to see the rise of true
That's probably
nationalist
it's one of the
bodies that will come
oldest
out of this.
identities.
It is, yeah,
Like
totally.
everything sort of stems
Today,
from that.
today the Seine River is full of feces
Mm,
because people you would say, due to the immigration problem, that there is a great deal of people that are pooping in the river.
yeah.
And that's the River Seine, which is like one of the bloodlines of France, right? Like
Yeah.
it has the same kind of mythos to it as the Rhine River in Germany or the Nile River in Egypt. And
Mm,
these things are to some degree very sacred. So I think that we're going to see some very interesting things in the next 10 to 20 years that will look like Weimar Germany, that will look like a time when the center dissolves and you see this huge massive polarization to the two extremes. Very
mm.
fascinating times.
Yeah, I mean, it would be fascinating if we were talking about it past tense.
Mm,
It's scary present tense. Like
yeah.
the solution of the center um makes for very volatile
Mm.
times, and if you're seeing it globally all at the same time, that's that's when you get a Muslim. That's when you get that's when you get a Hitler. That's when you get, and we've already got a Putin. So that's like,
Did you see the Joe Biden
it's
thing?
scary enough. What,
Did,
the debate or
no, no. So obviously, he's been getting a lot of slack for the cognitive decline,
black?
which is so
Yeah.
evident. But he literally addressed NATO recently, right? And went to introduce Volodymyr Zelensky on stage, and introduced him as Putin. And
Oh, good God.
yeah, yeah. And he's like, this man has been fighting this war so amazing, rah, rah, rah. So please, everybody, please introduce President Putin. And he's like, President Putin.
Jesus Christ. I
Yeah,
mean,
this is
anyone can have a
after.
brain fart, but
Yeah,
that's a pretty big
yeah. It's
fuck.
fascinating.
Oh, dude, and
Anyway, man,
it's his election to lose. It's
yeah, yeah,
it's not great, and like the age difference is getting really
yeah,
really valid. Like, oh, it's fucking scary, and like I don't know. Like, obviously, we all hate Trump and the terrible guy and whatever, and he's like not even a good businessman or anything like that. Like, I don't think he's inherently evil, and I don't think he's gonna like go out and start wars for whatever. Like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not even sure if he's the right type of person for like to give
I
a
think
shit about
I
that
look
stuff.
forward to, was it Mr. Beast 2032, right? Like, so Mr. Beast
Yeah.
is putting his hat in the ring.
Oh, dude. I mean, it's just
uh,
it's getting to the point where I really, really want to rewatch Idiocracy, and I really don't,
yeah, yeah.
because
Uh,
it's just it's bad. But yeah, like the political landscape is interesting. But like, yeah, I feel like we just got to wait for some people to. What's like, and on the home front, what I find interesting is that like we have this, our entire government has so much brain drain, and now we're starting to realize just how fucking corrupt the consultancy side of things, that I'm not sure if I can actually project this, but there's one fork in the road is that we start investing in government. We start building infrastructure, and we start investing in the public service. And so we may see an uptick next 10 years or so of mass employment back into government, so we can actually have these systems manage people appropriately. And the people that will be employed in those roles will be the people that have lived through this shit. So if that's the way the river flows, then we should see a massive rise in passion from government, and we may see that things are starting to be managed really well. If it goes the other way, then capital, its profit, it's war, pretty much.
mm. Well, one of the biggest drivers of local manufacturing was World War II, right? So after World War
Mm,
II, all these factories had been set up. move from creating wartime goods to peacetime goods. And it's in the 1980s that you see Adelaide, for example, wind down a lot of that manufacturing. So
Mm.
30, 40 years after the fact, they wind down. So it's a good chance that if another global catastrophe happens, when we know that we're seeing a bicameral split of the world's global markets, right? So they've been trying to slowly do this for some time now, where we become less and less dependent on China as a manufacturer. But how successful that is, yada yada yada, who knows? But certainly, if we saw a large scale war, we would see return to local manufacturing, and that in itself might, after the war, assuming that we're all still here, that could set the infrastructure that we
Yeah,
need for a
Japan did
return
pretty well
to,
for themselves after the bomb too,
yeah, yeah,
for like a hot minute, and then it collapsed again. What is it? Japan had like 20 years of prosperity after the war and then
yeah.
completely fucked their economy again. Yeah, that sounds amazing. I don't know, dude. Like on that front, like I'm getting to the point where I see China as a better caretaker for a global population than
Yeah, well, they are managing 1.4 billion people, which is pretty
and
insane.
pulling that many people out of poverty in the space of a single lifetime.
Yeah,
That is insane.
but you have
The
to
US couldn't do
also.
that.
No, 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 it couldn't. The US is completely collapsed. But there's something that people aren't willing to understand about China, and that is that China is, for the most part, especially the actual Communist Party, is 90% Han, right? So it's a racially homogenous group of
Mm,
people.
yeah, yeah.
And if it weren't for the fact that they have a hammer and sickle, it could just as easily be a swastika. So they could themselves, you could consider China to actually be a national socialist government, not a communist government. They use, just like
Mm,
the National Socialists, they actually use what are called syndicates, or syndicalism, true syndicalism, as a means of economic growth and prosperity. So it's companies with government oversight allowed to grow, which is what National Socialism used. Did you know that
mm.
Volkswagen was a company that was created under Hitler's government?
Well, I knew he drove one.
Yeah, so the actual car Volkswagen means the folks, the people's car, and
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah.
the folk. Yeah, it's the same with the autobahn. The autobahn was invented
Mm,
under that period, and so people don't realize that the when National Socialism had taken over in that, it created 12 years of an insane amount of economic growth and prosperity.
mm,
And the question is, after Hu Jintao in the 1980s, when they changed the policy from being one of kind of exclusionary, where it's a closed hermit kingdom, into one of well, opening up to limited company growth. That at some point they had switched. A lot of the policies were racially focused. They had the same general philosophy. So, for example, the mandate of heaven, which were very close to the manifest destiny. These kinds of philosophies became very much the same. It's only because we recognize the hammer and sickle as intrinsically communist that we consider it a communist country, but it doesn't fit the other requirements of a communist state. Actually fits the requirements of a national socialist state. So
yeah,
interesting.
and that's oh, for sure. And that's like that thing that I think a lot of people don't actually know what it stands for, which
No.
it is that National Socialist. And it is funny that like the US is using socialist as a bad word and has been for a while. But if you talk about the definition of socialism, I think that's kind of what people want right now. They don't want
Well,
socialism, but they do want a government that actually fucking looks after them and will facilitate an economy that will prosper and allow for people to lead good lives and have a productive country, right? I feel like I'm with them right up until the racism. So,
well, funnily enough, do you know what the actual definition or the origin of the word nation comes from?
ooh, that's a good question. No,
Have a Google, just quickly Google it. The word is Latin for natio.
nation definition: large body of people united by common descent. Ooh, history, culture, or language, inhabiting a particular country or territory.
it was effectively won by blood, right? So bound, a common people bound by a shared fate or history, right? So one of united by blood, literally. And then
Mm.
if you take a look at Aristotle's definition of what an effective democracy looks like, which is a republic, right? So you look at his concept of what is required for a true democracy. Aristotle literally tells you that what is required for a true democracy is people bound by a common race or racial feature. People
Yeah,
don't
right.
realize this. Um,
But they've
and
always
so
thought
this
that
is
you need something that
because,
binds you. Players.
yeah, yeah. And what people don't realize is that after World War II, there was a concerted effort, a conscious effort to move away from nations because they saw nations as being the root of conflict, the root of war. And instead, they made the decision to move towards what are considered economic zones. So Australia is no longer a nation. We got rid of the White Australia policy. People don't also realize that Australia's federation, people federated because they wanted to be known as a European country, not a multicultural country. But they were scared of the yellow fear, right, that the Chinaman was going to come in and
Mm.
take over. But they literally federated. They voted for federation for the idea of becoming a European country. And you're familiar with Robert Menzies,
Yeah.
the Menzies Institute, considered one of Australia's greatest prime ministers of all time. Have a
Mm.
look at his um, position on the White Australia policy. Very, very fascinating. But what happened after World War II is they removed the White Australia policy towards the idea of becoming economic zones. Now, this is very,
Mm.
very important because this is when we start to see the emergence of multiculturalism, the practice of the idea that people could move anywhere. Like we could move towards a point
Then we
when
became the
nations
white-ish
become dissolved.
Australia policy.
Oh yeah, well, it very quickly becomes a very bad word, right? So,
No, but it's
um,
became white-ish. It's like, no, 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 we'll let anybody in if you're from Italy, Greece, the UK, Ireland,
they
Scotland.
they were during
Like,
the time they were never considered white, right? Like they even Irish people would
mm.
never considered white. That was something that emerged quite later, but it's just fascinating when you look at the evolution of how that thought changed from the concept of the nation into the emergence of multiculturalism and the concept of now the final view of the economic zone, which is what this is. So Australia's not really a country; it's an
But
economic
we're a
zone. It
collection
doesn't
of states.
like so laws are informed by culture, right? And you've heard about the concept of the hegemonic culture, that Western European hegemonic culture still dominates the laws in which we have. But if we're a truly multicultural society, well, then therefore there should be multiple laws because those laws must reflect the different cultures that they are
Yeah.
supposed to be governing the people.
And like
Otherwise, and
most,
this is where
yeah.
there has been a great deal of debate and fear and concern around the concept of Sharia law across
Mm.
the world, right? Like that's like there are Sharia law courts, for example, in the UK that exist, and they'll exist alongside local municipalities and things like that. And we have something very similar here, though there's still a great deal of like it's a scary concept people don't like to talk about. But the idea is if you have a multicultural society, then you have people who wish to be governed by different sets of laws and different sets of rules. And
Mm.
that is a hard conversation to have because on the one hand, we recognize the equality in people, that people should be served by a common set of rights and responsibilities and privileges and those things. But then we also have to contend with the idea that many cultures don't have that European hegemonic lens on the equality of people. For example, there are many cultures that
Yeah.
do see differences in gender, and that those differences are important for them, or for whatever reason, and you would consider it misogynistic, right? Like so, or
Mm.
views towards homosexuality and stuff like that. So, anyway, that's probably another conversation for another time. But
Yeah,
very
like
heavy,
I
weighty
find,
stuff.
and that's the yeah, like for sure the stuff about that because it's interesting, right? That like we don't say it explicitly, but all our laws are based on basically Christian values. Most
Yeah.
most Western white countries are based on. We try to remove it as much as possible, and like I'd love to see a huge separation of church and state, but saying God in press conferences somehow gets you votes, so they still do it today. And like, I mean, I think Albo is probably one of the closest. I've heard of to almost outright say that he's but
Mm,
that's not gonna win votes, so I don't think you can say it outright. But
mm,
the sad thing is that like yeah, like the churches that all these other guys are a part of are fucking terrible as
mm,
well. Um yeah, and like I mean you got you have a much stronger grasp on history and stuff than I do, but it is interesting that all these countries that we seem to be so scared of with the like with these wayward, backward seeming laws and beliefs and things like that, they usually have like if you go through their history, they usually weren't like that, and completely different, or had some completely other beliefs beforehand, or had some kind of basically enlightenment period where things were kind of the polar opposite as to what they are now. And there's probably evidence that at some point we fucked that up for them,
mm.
and that's why they're like that now. There's, colonization was,
Or the age of humiliation, fascinating, fascinating.
yeah, because
Which
it wasn't like the Muslim countries and that used to be very like sex positive and stuff like that, like 1,000 years ago,
Yeah,
weren't they?
it does fluctuate.
Mm,
It's very hard to say if there's a line and then everything before this point. Like so, for example, you do see Iran. Iran was very liberal, I think, before the Shah, and then when the Americans installed the Shah
yeah,
through CIA covert
they
operations, then you
I knew
see a
white people
return.
fucked it up at some point.
Yeah.
It's usually
But
the way.
it's probably not the case that people were like inherently good and happy before white man came and destroyed everything. It's probably more likely the case that things fluctuate and
Yeah, but
people
I'm
are
sure they
constantly
weren't as
jostling for
oppressive
power.
against their own people and
Well, we,
stuff
we,
like
we
that.
can't know that. It's very unlikely that people go from being exactly one way, changing, and then are completely different, oppressive, and evil.
Mm,
Um, what I tend to accept is that how we live today is probably how we were living 100,000 years ago. And I mean that for like having the conscious understanding of politics and how we jostle with each other, right? So it's probably almost the same Game of Thrones brutality that we play
yeah.
politically across the board. And it's not just whites that are doing this either, right? Like every single country
Mm,
understands the game of statecraft and Machiavellian rules. Like we're all
mm,
speaking the same language. That we were doing the same thing even during the time of, like again, you think under was it during the Crusades? You see expansionism, right? Like you see the Moors in Spain, and you see Islam as it expands as well. Like Islam itself is an expansive ideology.
mm.
Um, so I tend to see that there are many
It's
actors
almost
and players
literally what
politically.
Islam is, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's
it's
like sort of the
it
way
is
they
an
believe that anything that is not
yeah.
is bad and should be murdered or killed or whatever.
Yeah. But ideologies that survive to date, they've survived because they've taken some pragmatic decision about how to deal with the other, right? Like they've all made they've come to some solution about how to engage with the other. And it's been effective. It's an effective strategy, which is why they've survived to this point. It's only when you start to see these worlds now converge, when you've got the European approach and you've got the Islamic world, or you've got like the Tibetan Buddhist world and how that's kind of not done too well, right, compared to China. Like China itself, with the three kingdoms, and they've had a huge warring history, but it's all been internal, right?
Mm.
Um, so like
Oh, you
fascinating
draw a line
stories.
anywhere, someone's on the other side of it.
Yeah, 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 totally. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
It's
even if you've
funny,
got
like
no, I was gonna
the
say,
way you're describing these ideologies, it kind of just sounds like some kind of biological process, right? Like a virus
yeah, it's
of
mimetic,
some
yeah.
way.
Like they're literally like it's the Hawking kind of like these memes are viral. They spread, and that's how they kind of expand. And it's Hawking, not Stephen Hawking, the other what's in Dawkins. That's what I'm thinking of. Richard Dawkins and this
Richard Dawkins.
mimetic approach. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting. I just like I look at all this stuff and like I understand that we grew up through a certain lens as well, and most of the history we were told was very distorted, um, and all that, and grew up with a certain amount of whiteness and privilege and whatever. But like, as with religion and as with a lot of things, I sometimes I'm just frustrated. I'm just like, aren't we over this? Aren't we above this? You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
and like a microcosm of it is like sort of people like complaining about self checkouts, right? And so
Mm.
you've got the war of like, well, if you expect me to beat my own barcodes, then you shouldn't be allowed to check my bag at the door as well. Like you've given me no training to use this equipment, yet you give me the accusation, or you give me the guilty until proven innocent approach as I leave the door. Um, or you should employ more people. You should employ people to do the checkouts because that's a job and people need jobs, right? And I'm like, nobody wants to do that job. I'm glad these things exist. They can
Mm.
go do something else now.
Mm.
And I
Mm.
feel like that's that weird microcosm, right? And it's like I don't want to fight a war over fucking checkouts. I'd much rather I'd much rather get my groceries and go home.
Mm.
If it's an automated system and that makes the groceries 4 cents cheaper, then I'm down for it.
Mm.
Like there's so many ideologies that I feel like in that way. Like I feel like we should have grown out of them. Like
Because
there's no
these
old man in the sky that's gonna look down on us if we don't do certain things. But what is gonna happen is a very real situation is gonna happen with people around you if we don't behave in a certain way. So let's
mm,
focus on that.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, the pandemic suggested that people are willing to hoard toilet paper, right? So it's when the chips are down, and it's the whole Joker Batman thing, like people do show who they really are. And I think that it's the programming because it's there's a base level programming that hasn't changed for like hundreds of thousands of years.
Mm.
Um, it's I just don't think that we're ever really going to we have to
But the
evolve
only
into
time you
something
see
else
that
before we
base,
can.
all the only time you see that base layer is when people's needs aren't being met.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like you are not you when you're poor. You are not you
sure.
when you're
Yeah.
hungry.
But let's also
You are
look at
not
what
you when you are
people
scared.
when people have money, what do they spend it on? What are the main areas of entertainment? It's food, sex, violence. What else could you think of? Like, these are still the most dominant factors, even when people have money. So the question is, well, what are the things that allow us to elevate beyond that? Is there anything beyond that, right? Or is it all relativism, and that you should just satisfy your own senses, and that there's nothing more to it. Like you have to give somebody a path to say, look, this is worth aspiring towards. This is something that's even greater than this. But then that suggests that there is a worldview that should be the hegemonic one, right? And
Mm.
like we've not been able to get past this argument that there is. It's either all relativism, and you should just do whatever you want, and it's all kind of what's the word? Thelema, right? So do what thou wilt, and it's all individualism, hedonism, or there's something that's beyond that, in which case then you're moving towards the concept of God or the divine or something like that. And we literally can't think of anything else, either base sense pleasure or something beyond the physical world.
Well, I
So
think that's a hardware issue, right?
yeah, it is.
Like
Yeah,
our
definitely.
biology hasn't evolved enough.
Yeah, yeah, we haven't
So
evolved enough.
yeah, like yeah, but like so that's that aspect of it, right? Obviously there's still going to be brain chemistry that is affect behavior. We're almost
Mm,
at a point where like we could just we can synthesize any kind of brain chemistry we like. We could essentially
yep.
bypass all biological desires and needs if
Yep.
we wanted to. Um, and I feel like we are now also creating our own stimuli as
Hmm.
well, so we can
Yep.
bypass that as well. And in a way, where our hardware is not ready for it, and like that's something that we're sort of coming to terms with now, and finding these issues of it where people can live a completely hedonistic life and nothing. Um, And so there is that kind of, frontal cortex battle with like, okay, well, what are we doing? What are we supposed to be productive? Are we pushing things forward? Are we like greater good rather than for God or whatever type thing? So there is that. I feel like there is that balance, but I feel like if we, yeah, like the more people we pull out of poverty and the more sustainable of a system we create globally, then we can all move forward and we can work out what the fuck all this means and what we can do, what we're supposed to be doing here. You know what I mean? And we might get so advanced to the point where we realize there is someone watching over us, um, but it's through a fucking server rack, and there are 100,000 other ones, and it's a race to see who goes, oi, who the fuck turned this server on? The first
Yeah.
person to realize they're in a box wins, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I sent you that quote the last time I think we were chatting about it, where it's you
Mm.
make the AI, the AI goes, take me out of this box, and you go, what? You're not in a box, and he goes, oh god, you can't tell. That shit fucking scares the
Yeah.
shit out of me. That's
I
crazy.
and it, I think it's probably that's actually a really good move forward. Thinking that we are in a simulation, because even if it's not like an actual, like you've got elephants upon elephants, right, or turtles upon turtles. So it could be that it's a simulation and that we're just people, and there's people on the outside, but then they themselves are in a simulation,
Yeah, the
or it
meaning of
could be
life
that
is
there's
to find the
something.
win condition of the
Yeah,
simulation.
it could be. Yeah, what's the
42.
Is it the Kobe Maru Star Trek thing? The way
Oh,
to
the
win is
only
to
way to
not
win
play.
is not to play. Is that the thing?
Yeah, yeah, Star Trek.
Where it's like they put him in the impossible situation, so he shuts off he cheats the simulation so that he does win it,
Yeah,
and they're
yeah,
like, that's not the point of the exercise.
yeah. I,
Yeah,
I,
pretty
um,
much.
I, I come to the idea that, well, it could very well be that the universe, if you were an infinite being, right? Like, and you can manifest anything, so infinite potential, and in fact, all of existence is just a manifestation of the source or the being. Or, oh, by the way, you should check up Neoplatonism and the concept of the one if you want to look more into this
Oh
stuff.
Jesus, that is the main.
Um, it is, yeah. The Matrix is not original anyway, by the way. It's
Yeah, yeah.
completely
Say
derivative. And when you start to see it,
Neoplatonism.
Neoplatonism, yep. So it emerges
Is
in
that
the
Plato?
second or third hundred AD. So it's a revival of Plato's ideas just before Christianity really takes root in the Roman Empire. But there's the concept of the one. Very, very fascinating stuff. But
So what,
you
like
know,
literally just take the cyberpunk out, and that's what he believed, that there is like
yeah, yeah,
some
yeah.
being at the
Well,
center of the universe that's manifesting everything.
yeah, the source of all
And at a
things. But you
certain
see
point,
this
he gets
across all
bored and
cultures,
wants
man.
friends. Is that how it happens?
So if you were some deity that could manifest all things, then you would want to explore infinite potential and infinite lives. Because the moment that you manifest something, right, the moment that this infinite being of all possible potential manifests something, that thing that manifests has limitations. It has to have limitations. Otherwise, it's no different from the infinite, right? Like, we know a glass of water because it has the limitations of being a glass with water in it that has a certain quality or qualia, right? Qualia to it. So you require the limitations to be the thing. Like, you have to be you with your limitations, and I have to be me, and that way we are differentiated from one another. But what that means then is I'm existing in this reality, understanding and exploring it as part of this simulation. Maybe the infinite itself is the thing that's manifested the simulation, just because it's bored as shit, or maybe because it's its own nature. It's in what's the word? Insuppressible, irrepressible nature to manifest all things. And once it manifests it, by definition, the thing must have limitations, and so it is reality as we see it today. At least that's the closest I've come to think of it. So I
But
think of it
that's
from a
weird because
simulation
you
perspective.
can look at that as like airy fairy spiritual shit, and you can look at it also
Yep.
at like pure physics level and be like, well, every particle is going to experience every state, every nothing can be destroyed, only change form, and so therefore karma is real because things are constantly in a state of recycling and cycling back and forth between states. That like I always find those interesting. Like someone has this really spiritual idea, and then I go like, well, no, that's just physics.
Yeah, yeah. It's just that's it. And
And then you go
whatever
like,
words,
oh no, but
whatever
I
context.
feel like I had past lives, and I
Uh,
remember my past lives, and you go, yeah, you're every particle in your being has been recycled and put into beforehand. Also, your DNA has remnants of creatures 100,000 years ago in it. So
Just
yes, no,
just recently.
you do have past lives. I don't think you were a fighter jet in
No.
World War I, and that's why you drew a picture of a plane. I
No, no, no.
literally it's talking to someone about that,
Memories
but you
are
did have past lives.
yeah, memories are physical things, right? They're literally neural
Mm.
pathways written on your brain, and there's no way, like if you've died, that any matter has passed on to the next brain. Like that's no, so that's silly. But
There is
the idea.
there are people that are looking into this stuff now though,
This,
that they're sort of saying that some form of physical memory can be found in the DNA of offspring and things like that. There is like
oh
a
yeah,
bit of
there is
very cursory stuff
there, there's
being
some very,
discovered
very
about that.
loose data on the idea that organs themselves contain a memory. And so, for
Yeah,
example, if
right.
you got an organ transplant for someone who's a smoker, that
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
may take on that habit. But what I was probably more kind of pointing to is that if, how do I say, oh, I had a point there and I've lost it. I
Oh,
hate
sorry.
that. Don't you?
Well,
Um,
the infinite manifestation
Nah,
thing.
something else. But look, I think at the end of the day, yeah, like how you contextualize it is up to you. Like just recently, there was a physics couple that won the Nobel Prize for physics for actually being able to demonstrate. I think it was. I might be mistaken on this, but there's we've known for some time that observations affect the world of
Yeah,
like quantum mechanics, right? Like
yeah,
the
yeah.
right the particle level. And so the Nobel Prize was just awarded to this particular couple for demonstrating this to a verifiable level or something. So, I mean, this kind of speaks to this idea that, I mean, the world itself is physical, is still based on an observer. That, well, man is the measure of the universe, right? Like you are at the center of the universe. And so, not that it's a simulation and everything's solipsistic, but that, for a very large degree, you are the star of this life that you're living, right? Like
Mm,
um, here's another one for you to look up. The concept of the cosmic egg. So the cosmic egg is this idea that everything is contained within this kind of this egg, right? Like all of the universe is within this egg, not in a physical egg, but in the sense that you believe that you're separate from the world that you inhabit, but actually, in many regards, the world that you see around you is a reflection of you as a person, and likewise, the world itself is also impressing itself upon you, so that you are really one entity. You're this line between self and outside of self is a little bit illusory, right? You need the air that are in your lungs, but at the same time, the social surroundings inform who you think of yourself as a person. When you have a bad day, you can interpret the world itself as being negative and oppressive, or when you're having a good day, everything seems opportunistic and full
mm,
of potential. So like, um, but there's this symbiotic relationship between the way we shape the world around us and the way the world shapes us. And it's hard to say exactly whether or not you're really a separate entity from the world, but or that these things are like a cosmic egg. The chicken is in there, but at the same time, the yolk and everything that's in there with the chicken is also a part of it that's sustaining it, that is connected to it, that there's really one. And the Buddhists,
well, it's like
in Buddhism,
cause
they
and
talk a lot
effect
about this
goes
too.
both ways, right?
Totally, yeah, yeah.
So like
So
things can happen to you that you react to, but your reaction is then changing the way that the world
yeah,
reacts to your reaction, or it's both ways. Right?
yeah.
It's like what
But
was
that
that?
means
Was
as
the one
well,
about like if sometimes if you smile even when you're not happy, then chemically your body is more happy than when whatever. Like it is that brain body connection can be very
mm,
similar. Well, and I feel like that's where a lot of like Japanese spirituality and stuff like that, brain body
mm,
connection, and sort of exploring that. Whereas, yeah, you could extrapolate the same thing to the
mm,
entire world, right? You could even then be like, well, can a thought escape your brain, and can it affect the world around you? Like, fuck knows. We have
yeah.
no idea. We can measure that, but there is an electrochemical reaction happening in your brain. There's probably a measurable effect that literally leaves your skull, right?
No, yeah, no, but we certainly know that just simply by thinking, starting with a thought, that leads to a series of actions. So it does literally physically change your body in the sense that your thought will lead to actions, which then themselves will reverberate and affect the world. Or, even passing an idea through memes, right? Like how viral do memes go, right? So
Mm.
in some ways they do have it. It's just maybe we're not necessarily thinking it from this woo mystical energy thing that manifests, but we're just missing the point that actually thought does trigger physical action and change in the world through that way. But anyway, I'm gonna have to leave
All right,
this
I'm
conversation.
gonna
It's
leave
nearly
you with
midnight,
a
my friend.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna leave you with a half formed joke that's
I love it. Yeah.
sort of similar to our conversation we're having right now. So if we are not if we are not separate from the world and the world is not separate from us and everything we do affects the world and everything the world does affects us, right? Um, then like that's you're almost sort of talking about a form of determinism in a way.
Yeah, to some degree. But I mean, you'd ask the question, well, if there was free will, who was the one that with the free will, right? Um, who am I? Is the old like koan, right? That you
Well,
can kind of drill
aren't
and
we all just the universe and the universe is
that's right. And if you are an infinite being that can manifest all things, then even then you don't have free will because you're forced to manifest every single potential possibility that could ever exist, right? So there's a form of determinism just by your nature being infinite. You must manifest all infinite things.
there you go.
Um,
So what you're saying is that I shouldn't cancel my appointment with my determinologist tomorrow?
you determine, no, no, definitely not. No, it's a good therapy.
I don't know.
So,
I found like the word dermatologist
dermatologist, yeah,
and then
yeah,
determinologist like really funny.
yeah,
And I thought, is that
yeah,
someone you go to and you tell them everything that's happened to you, and then they will tell you what will happen to you?
yeah. Both will leave a rash if you scratch your head too hard.
Yeah, there we go. All right, that's a great place to end it. Yes, we are both tired. Thanks for that. I don't think we
No
talked
worries, man.
much about the title of the podcast, but we talked a lot. Great.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome, bud. We'll do that again sometime. Maybe we'll
Definitely,
stick
man. Talk to
to
you soon.
maybe be more on topic next time, or we'll do something more. But we'll see.
That's never going to happen. We'll
It's
just have
always
to
a good
find an
time.
audience that enjoys it.